Are you ready for a blast from the past? In this compilation video, we are going to be taking a look at some smalls that sell that you may have forgotten about but have generated tons of income for people. Let's go ahead and hop into it. Welcome back, guys. So I have another episode in our series of smalls that sell and making money with woodworking, and I have a lineup for you. So for anyone that is new to the channel and is wondering what in the world I'm talking about by smalls that sell, I'm basically breaking down items that are hot right now in big box stores, telling you how they were made and how you can make those exact same items for a fraction of the price. And as always with this series, I've been getting a ton of comments from people just telling me their stories about how many of these items that they have sold. And the big one has been the snowflakes. I showed you how to make these 18-inch snowflakes that you can build for less than a buck. I cannot tell you how many DMs I've gotten from people that tell me that they cannot make these fast enough. And they're sending me all of these super cool pictures of how they put their own twist to them. And that is what this is about. We're taking something that is hot in the stores, we're putting our own twist to it, and then we're selling these at a fraction of the price. So in this video, I'm not only going to be breaking down what other people are doing, but I'm going to be showing you how they've done it, from $200 wall art to this picnic table. It's kind of like the squirrel tables that we talked about, but bigger. And all of the ones that I have found online, people are either sold out or they're back ordered at $50 to $100 a piece. I'm going to teach you how to make this for $2. Picnic table. Who would have thought? Okay, so for this first one, I'm not really for sure who had this for sale, but I liked it and it was listed under their most popular items. So always look for that as well whenever you're surfing these different sites for ideas. This was labeled as a flat wood caddy, any type of a tray with a handle, be it in the center, be it on the ends. Trays are hot. Trays have always been hot, and especially one like this that is primitive. So for this 21 by 13 tray, they are wanting $65. So really, that's not terrible. If I made this, I would probably sell it for around 35 bucks. But if you look at this, it is super easy to make, especially for you guys out there that build with pallet wood. This would be perfect. So let's talk about how they built this. So I've taken 4-inch material and used it for all around the sides and the inside dividers. The very center where the actual handle is at, that's actually a couple of boards glued together. But if you had a 5-inch board to put in there, that would be perfect. That handle is actually jigsawed out. So from the sides, you'll want to go in at 4 inches and then go up for that extra inch where the handle meets, and then very crudely, just like this, because you want it to look rustic, you want it to look old, you want it to look like it's been laying around someone's old farmhouse and they found it in a barn somewhere. But for the handle, it is cut out with a jigsaw. So just mark out your long oval, take a drill bit wider than your jigsaw blade, drill a hole where the inside is, the cutout, and just take your jigsaw from the inside, find your line, and cut out that handle. Piece of pie. And if you look really close, this was actually put together very cheaply. They've used brad nails and glue, that's it, for the ends, and the exact same thing for the inside dividers. What I do not like about this is if you look real close, at the very bottom, they used a 1/4-inch plywood. You can actually see that from the top view. 1/4-inch plywood on the bottom. I don't like that because if it gets wet at all, it's going to fall apart. If I were you and you had the extra material, let's say for the pallet wood, just use the same slats for the bottom and keep everything looking vintage. And if you notice these 2 slats here, that's supposed to make it look like it was an old square nail. And I've actually shown you in distressing videos, if you've seen any of those, that I actually use this exact same technique. I keep these old square nails, or you can go buy a new horseshoe nail or square cut nail and get the exact same look. You just lay your nail on there, hit it with a hammer, and that makes it look like this wood was stacked with these in between. You know, they had fallen out, this wood was stacked and reused to build this later on. You can sell it just like it is, or if you would like to just dress this up, have different kinds of looks, have different colors, go for it. But go for the rustic look on this one. And when you stage it up, make sure to stage it up kind of like they did. Put a couple of mason jars with some flowers in there. I would put some old gardening tools and things like that in there as well. Show people what this could look like on their front porch or in their house. And this next one, remember how I've told you that people will spend money on their kids, their grandkids, and their pets, even pet chickens. We've talked about the squirrel table before, about how my kids actually set up an assembly line and made tons of those things and sold them for $20 a piece and could not keep up with orders. I mean, they sold like crazy. So I give you a picnic table. Chickens are in, and everyone loves anything that has to do with chickens, literally. These are actually pretty cool. Keeps the feed in here. Looks like a smaller picnic table. It's a lot bigger than the squirrel picnic table. You can just set it on the ground, and people are going nuts over these. The ones that I did find, they were $50 to $100 a piece, and they were either a major back order or sold out completely. So people are buying these up like crazy. And the best thing of all about this, one fence picket. So you can build this for $2. So I showed my son how popular these were and how expensive that they were going for. And of course, he's like his old man and went into production mode. So this is actually one that he made. So just like always, I'm going to tell you every single step to make these. For anyone that has plans in the hand and would actually like to have plans for something like this and support a young entrepreneur, we sat down together and made those plans. I'll put those in my Etsy shop. The link is in the description. We are going to take our fence picket and rip it down into 4 boards. And then we're going to make our tabletop. And for this, we're going to need 4 boards that are 16 inches long, 2 that are 7-inch, and 2 that are 17-inch. And the 7-inch boards and the 17-inch boards, they're going to be our sides. So we need to put 45-degree angles on each one of these boards. So once we have those parts cut, let's go ahead and put this together. I'm going to start by gluing together the bottom and then putting our sides on. We're going to brad nail the parts into place. I'm going to pre-drill the sides and the ends for 1 1/4 inch deck screws. This will lock everything together. And we're going to start by cutting our legs at 8.5 inches, putting a 30-degree angle on each end. And then we'll adjust our miter to 20 degrees in order to cut our top bar and our bottom bar. So with both ends cut at 20 degrees, the top will be 7.5 inches from tip to tip and the bottom will be 17 inches. The top bar will sit flush with the top of the leg. The bottom bar will be 1.5 inches up from the bottom of the feet, and then I'm going to glue and brad nail these into place. So with our 2 ends built, let's go ahead and attach our benches. The benches are 17 inches long and they're going to be spaced 2 inches from the ends of the table. Again, I'm going to glue and throw in a couple of brad nails. So now let's attach the tabletop. I'm going to square everything up. I'm going to measure in 2 inches from the outside edges, pre-drill and install 1 1/4 inch exterior deck screws. And that is it. Yes, I use cedar for this, so it costs $4. But I could have done this out of 1 pine fence picket for $2 while everyone else was charging $50 to $100. Again, that was a super simple build that has a very high profit margin because it's something that's kind of unique. What he decided to do with this one was, instead of leaving it all plain, leaving it all just cedar, like almost every single store that I have seen that sells these, he decided he wanted to paint these up white and actually make it look more like a table. Put your twist to it, add some different color ends to it, maybe add different color benches, whatever that you would like. Just like the squirrel tables, I promise you, these things will sell. I'll go $35 to $40 a piece and sell quantity because they're super easy to make. And if you do these out of pine fence pickets, then they're only $2 to make. This is another cool idea from the PB that actually blew my mind because this is a $1,040 mirror. I don't know where the $40 came from, but it's a $1,000 mirror. So they're selling this mirror as a reclaimed wooden mirror. Somebody messed up somewhere because when I went through the description, it actually said that it was made out of MDF. I've never heard of reclaimed MDF, whatever. So we're going to pretend like that it's actually made out of wood. This will be another perfect pallet wood build because of the natural wear and tear that pallet wood gets. But if you don't have pallet wood, you can take 1x4 material, distress it up. But if you look really close, you can tell how they have distressed this. So the corners, they're just 45s. You put a couple pocket holes in the back or however you would like to join your 45s. But the distressing is what actually sells this. What they have done is they've taken a wire wheel on an angle grinder or a wire brush and they have removed some of these soft woods. So in the deepest parts that were cut out with that wire wheel, they have added white paint. So stay with me here for a minute. So they put their white paint on and then they sanded it back off, leaving the white only in those cracks. And then they have used their amber stain. And make sure to wipe that stain off well once you have it on. That way that white paint still pops up from those grooves. But that's how they have gotten this look. That's how they have distressed this. As far as the mirror that goes in the back, again, I would go to Walmart, buy one of those $10 door mirrors. And here's a picture of the back. You can actually cut that rabbet joint on your table saw or using a router for the glass to set down in. And then these corner tabs and the hangers, you can actually pick up on Amazon or really any hardware store for next to nothing. So you could take a $10 mirror, a couple of pieces of 1x4, and you can replicate this look that they're getting $1,000 for less than $20. Okay, so this next one actually blew my mind whenever I first saw it. Actually, it blew my mind when I first saw the price. The product was cool. This block art that the OPB is providing will gladly sell you this for $1,600. And it's not near as big as what it looks. So in this picture, they put it on a blank wall to make it look bigger, but this is 4 foot by 4 foot. And that's all that this is end cuts from 3x3 material. So 3x3 material, 4x4 material, whatever. This geometric art is what they're calling it, which it is pretty cool. But they are making this in sections, and they're actually selling those sections for $180 a piece. This is the small section of the large piece that we just saw. So what they're doing is they're actually making these sections up, and you can buy as many as you want and put them together to make as big of a piece of art as you would like. But they're selling that one for $1,600. This one is $180, and I made my own. I made this out of 4x4s, and I like mine better because I actually made it out of reclaimed wood. This was an old 4x4 that I had laying around that was actually vintage and has a story. So I just zoomed in and looked at exactly what was going on. With all these shapes going different ways, it's kind of weird to the eye, which that's what they want. That's what makes it that geometric art. But if you look at it, they're repeating patterns of the exact same block, just laying them out in different directions. So if you want to make this, if you want to use a 2x2, a 3x3, or a 4x4, it does not matter. So just by looking at it, the thinnest part of this wedge looks like it'll be about an inch. So that's what I did to mine, about an inch thick. And then in the description, it says that it is actually 3 inches off of the wall. So I went from 3 inches down to an inch. So when you're cutting that on a miter saw, I set it up at a 30-degree angle going from my 1 inch mark to my 3 inches. I was able to cut every single one of these blocks in about 3 to 4 minutes. If you look at this one, you can actually see where they have glued these to a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. Bingo. Put a little wall hanger on this. So in about 15 minutes, I took a piece of scrap wood and made something that they are selling for $180. So there it is. I kind of like it. May hang it on the wall down here. So this one caught my eye because anything that displays wine is in and has been in for a long time. It's just the styles and the methods that they display the wine. That's what's changed. So for this look, this is what I would call modern rustic. So what they're trying to do is make it look like that they've used rustic material to make like a modern wine display. But what really caught my eye on this was the different possibilities that you could do with this. They're running $114 for this one. So it's an 8-inch plank of wood with some hardware on it. And that's pretty much all that is. So did a little bit of research on it. You can actually buy similar hardware to this. You can get 6 pieces for $18. So yeah, that's a little bit high to me, but they've only used 4 pieces in this. And if you break it down, that's only a few bucks per piece. Another idea is that you could take a slimmer piece of wood and make single bottle displays just using one set of hardware and sell those for 20 bucks a piece. So this hardware, I'll link it into the description, and there's a couple of different designs that were pretty cool. So they had this design, and they also had this spiral looking design, and they were about the same price. So for 3 bucks a piece, it'd be well worth the investment to pick those up. You could paint them different colors, get some of that like antique bronze paint, or if you're going for the modern look, you can get the rings in just black. And then just find some interesting looking pieces of wood. That's all that it takes. Just a cool piece of arm wood. Sand it down a little bit, let some of that natural color come through with that gray. Pop a couple of these on there. Sell it for 20, 30 bucks, whatever that you would like. If you have an end cut of a live edge piece of wood, throw a couple of these on there. So that is actually what caught my eye, was the opportunity to make so many different products using the same concept. So simple. So in this case, simple is good. So our first one is going to be about a fall item. Like I've said before, you need to get a jump on the seasons. Do what the big box stores do. Whenever you see fall items start to come out, you start making fall items. We've covered pumpkins in the past while talking about following the holidays, because people will spend money on holidays. People will spend money on holidays, their kids, their grandkids, and their pets. That is a given. So I thought that this was pretty cool. What sells this is the distressing, okay? It can be cut out with a jigsaw. It looks like that it's made out of pine or fir of some type, and it could even be fence picket material. You should have extra fence picket scraps laying around if you've done any of our previous builds, okay? So this can be made out of scraps. Once you get your basic template made, keep it for making multiples. The little tin stars can be bought at Hobby Lobby or Amazon for probably next to nothing. And what's holding the little bird on is just a hole drilled into the side of the pumpkin and into the bird with a stiff piece of wire. So our first demonstration I'm going to show you is how to get this distressed look, how easy that it is. I'm going to do it on white. And I'm going to use a scrap piece of fence picket, okay? Again, I have a ton of it laying around now. What I've done on the back here, spray paint black, real thin layer underneath, and white spray paint on top. That is it. Now I'm going to sand with, this is just 120 grit sandpaper. Okay, again, this is with the black behind it. But basically all that you're doing is you're knocking the paint off of the high spots and showing what is underneath. Super easy to distress, and that is exactly what they did in this. And you can do the same thing with any color out there. You do not have to put black underneath. You don't have to put anything underneath. If you did not, then the raw wood would show, kind of like what they've done here. Or if you would like the raw wood to have more of a ambered look or an aged look, then I would put a stain on it, let that dry, then paint that, then distress it, and it would give it that ambered aged look underneath. This is just one of 100 different ways to distress wood. But for this example, make sure to do different colors, do fall colors, because if someone wants to buy one, I can almost guarantee you they will buy a set, or they will buy 2 or 3 or 5. And they're selling for $70 for a set of 3. This is a perfect example of a moneymaker. And our next item is going to be from one of my favorite places on earth, the Pottery Barn. And I have nothing against the Pottery Barn. I know I make fun of them a lot, but they have it figured out. Their prices are astronomical because they offer items that people cannot find anywhere else. It can be something as simple as a stick. Yeah, it's the only place on earth that you can buy a stick for $60. And I actually looked down like in the reviews, and there are a ton of people that have bought sticks. So I'm going to show you several different items from Pottery Barn that you can put your own twist to. This first one blew my mind because they're selling this thing for $899. For 900 bucks, this funky shaped mirror can be yours. Or I can tell you how to make it for about 20 bucks, if even that. Okay, so this mirror, that's all that they have done is taken scrap wood. And if you zoom in on this, you can actually see where this wood is glued together. So you can take your scrap wood, let's just say that you have, 4-inch pieces, just glue them, try to keep it the same kind of wood, glue them together. Once all that's good and dry, then you can trace out this outline, take a jigsaw, get that outline to it, get that depth. For 10 bucks, you can get one of those full-size mirrors at Walmart and the little clips that go onto the back. You may have to pick up a little glass cutter online. They're like 10 bucks, but essentially you could make this for less than $20 and they're getting 900 because it's different. You make this, you take this to a sale, you post this online, you can sell these things like crazy, and it's made out of scrap. And one more from the PB, we have a modern rustic serving tray. I'm about to show you how hard it is to make a modern rustic look, how to make a serving tray. So they've taken a new piece of wood, this is not old, and they've put a couple of handles on those. I've looked it up, and for $20 you can get 6 of these handles off of Amazon. They want $70 for this board with handles, but it is how you pitch it. It is how you market it. This is modern rustic. This is not a board with handles. That's what we see. This is a modern rustic serving tray. And people are buying these things. A store like that with their data, their analytics, everything that they run, they know and they will not waste space on anything that will not sell and that has not proven itself to sell. They are selling these planks of wood for $70. So let me show you just how hard it is to make a modern rustic serving tray. All right, so that's all that I have done is put a flat disc, and this one is actually an old one, needs to be cleaned. I put it on an angle grinder. You do not have to use an angle grinder. You can actually use heavy grit sandpaper on a regular sander. And it's as simple as that. This is one that I made a little earlier, just put a stain on it. There's your modern rustic serving tray. You can make this out of any type of wood, but it is all in the contours of these edges that gives it that look. And that's how you make a $70 modern rustic serving tray. And the next awesome buy that you can get at the Pottery Barn is cutting boards. I actually have an old video on how to make different types of cutting boards, but these are $329 a piece. Don't expect anything like that out of these. But look how easy it is to make. This is made with a jigsaw. That's some wide plank pine, probably some shelving boards or things like that. It actually says knotty pine in the description. We're taking some type of a dark paint, putting it just around the edges, blending it in with sandpaper, and then maybe putting a light stain over the top of the whole thing to get that amber look. The distressing, you can take it as far as you want. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's actually little cut marks. In the video, I show you how to replicate those cut marks. I actually just use a hatchet and a machete, but you can make something just like this, cutting it out with a jigsaw Don't even worry about templates or anything like that, and you can sell these things. Everyone loves primitive. And if you put any type of finish on it, make sure that you're selling it as a decoration. These are actually sold as primitive decorative cutting board. And I actually threw a larger item in here because of the huge potential for profit with this one. I would not consider this a small. This is more of a medium to a large item, but it is super simple to build. Sliding barn doors are in, and everyone is looking for people to make them. This is a perfect example of an easy one that you can make out of simple material. They are selling these for $800 a set, and everything in this picture is 3/4 of an inch thick. It looks like that they have used 1x4s on the sides, 1x6s for the middle. The top boards look like that they are 1x8s, as well as the center and the diagonal boards. Where it says 1.5 inches on the side, that is them taking into account where they've stacked that 8-inch cross board on top of the 4-inch side boards. So they're both 3/4, so 1.5 inches. But every part for this door is 3/4 of an inch thick. Super easy to make, and you could pump these things out. So we'll give the PB, that's what I'm gonna call it from now on. It's just easier to say instead of Pottery Barn. We're gonna give the PB a rest, and this one is actually from Kohl's. This is a serving tray, and I'm gonna cover a couple of different serving trays. We've covered them in the past. I've talked about how everyone loves serving trays, and you need to create them for different styles. Not just your style, because like I've said in the past, what you build is not about what you like, it is about what the customer likes. So you need to kind of have a variety for each type. So not just the rustic serving trays. This is more of a modern serving tray. And like I said, everyone loves them. They like to set them in the center of their table. They'll put some pepper shakers in them. They'll do whatever. But serving trays sell like crazy. This build could easily be a fence picket or a pallet wood build. The material isn't but about 1/2 inch to maybe 5/8 inch thick, maybe 3 to 4 inch wide slats, and then the rest is just this design. We actually went over how to make a similar style a few videos back in the herringbone planter. This is more of the chevron style, but it's the same type of concept, and people love it. And the cool thing is you can stain this up, paint this up in any different types of colors that you want. Remember, have a style to offer to everyone. And here is another build from the PB. For $130, you can get this plant stand. This is all put together with butt joints. Very, very simple to build. They put a bit of an angle there on the end, maybe 15, 20 degrees just to get it to lean against a wall. Could easily be built out of fence pickets or pallet wood. Don't expect $130. Throw 50 or 60 bucks on there, you'll sell them. And the thing is that when people are looking to decorate, they actually go to the Pottery Barn's website, things like that. They'll see something that they love and they see the price, like this $130. And they'll be like, I'm not paying $130 for that, but it's really cool. I'd love to have one. That's where you come in. You offer the same style for half the price. Your price looks phenomenal compared to theirs. You make a sale. And this next one is a farmhouse garden tray. So you see how they are marketing this. So they're using this farmhouse, this rustic garden. Okay, so back in the old days, they would take these garden trays out to the garden, you know, carry them out, pick all the vegetables and bring them back in. You know, if it were me, I would actually throw some vegetables in one or two of them just to kind of show that and push that name. But this farmhouse garden tray is $135. Now, let me show you how easy those are to make. That look familiar? My son made this tray yesterday just while I was working around the shop. I showed him a picture of it. We had some old material laying around, and the metal that's in this material is nothing but 1-inch flat stock. You can pick it up at any big box store, but they're going to charge you, I don't know, $3 or $4 a foot for it. If you have any type of place around where you live that actually sells steel, they will have this, and it'll be around $1 a foot. So this box took 1 2x4 and 2 feet of this flat stock. So about $2 in flat stock. The 2x4 was some old wood that I had laying around. Again, you could easily make this out of pallet wood. Do not try to sell these for $135. Yes, you may sell a few, but as easy as it is to make these and the money that you have in this, why try to sell something for $135 when you sell it for 50 or 60 bucks and sell a ton of them? Whenever people buy these, they're going to buy more than one most likely. And to ensure that, you can say something like, these are $60 a piece, or for $100, you can get a set of 2. And for scrap wood and $2 worth of material, I'd take that all day long. I'm gonna throw this in there. This is another item from the PB, but I think this is plastic. You could take one of the planter boxes that we have made, like the Farmhouse planter box, make 2 of them, put some slats across the middle, and then you have a planter bench. This is just an idea. These are some for $450 a piece, and you could probably make one of these for less than $30. Okay, so this one was very interesting, and the reason why is because it's different. Okay, so we've talked about crates. Crates sell like crazy. Everyone loves crates to stack them them up just like this, set them around, just decoration. But these are offset. You notice that they're not all joined on the ends like most crates. They've taken pallet wood, offset the wood, glued it into panels, cut that down, and made their boxes. They offer probably 20 or 30 different sizes, so something for everyone there. But the small box is $116. The large box is $400. And this particular page has over 9,000 sales so far. You do the math on that one. This one is actually from Kirkland's, and it is stacked pumpkins. And a lot of these are going to be decor items. You'll start to notice a trend. Every single year, there's going to be something that is hot, something that is in. And you'll notice multiple items that weren't in last year that are in now. That's the trend that you need to follow. This is one of those. Almost all of the home decor places that I kind of check out to see what's going on had these in some sort. Super easy to make, and they want $60 for this thing. It's only 5 inches wide. So obviously the back of it is made out of one board. So 5 inches wide, fence picket. You're going to hear me mention fence pickets quite a bit, but keep in mind that it does not have to be fence picket material. You can use any type of material that you would like. I say fence picket because you can get them for a couple bucks a piece. So let's say that we're making this out of fence picket material. The back of this design is just connected. So you would just jigsaw this out. This particular one is actually pretty large. It's 27 inches long, 5 inches wide. And then the front is just extra pieces of that. You would make those shapes, glue, nail it on, and paint it up with fall colors. So for one fence picket, again, $2 in my area, you can make 2 of these. They're selling them for $60. You would have $1 a piece in there, plus your time, paint, things like that. If it were me, I would be selling these for $20, and I think at $20 they would sell all day. And this is another version of the stacked pumpkins. Again, I told you that this is in this year. So in this version, it is just a single board. And that's all that they have done. Instead of adding pieces to the front, they've taken a Dremel tool or a router with a V-bit and cut those grooves of the pumpkin in there. Piece of pie. Actually, pumpkin pie, which I do not like. So for this one, guys, I had to throw this one in here. This was on Kirkland's fall decor section. They listed this as a 24 by 18 window frame. This would be super easy to make, and again, you can literally make this with one fence picket, and it's on sale right now for $140. So if you don't want to spend the $2 on a fence picket to make it, you can pick one up for $140. So there's the advertising for them. It looks like that they've used 2-inch material all the way around the edges, and that is a butt joint. Easy Craig pocket hose in the back. The center part I actually had to zoom in just because they have so much junk around it. They have one board, and it's a 1-inch board that's going all the way down that is connected to your frame, and then it's actually another thin board behind it. They don't even connect in the center. They just overlap. So it makes it even easier to build. I would cut a 1-inch strip and then turn it on its edge and split it. Put one in front, one behind it, throw a drawer pull that you have laying around, or you can pick them up for really cheap. Stage it up like this so people can see what it would look like in their house. Actually put something in the center just like that, because that's actually really good staging, and you will sell these. If you didn't have any of that decor around it, it would look pretty plain. But the way that they have it dressed up, people can see what it would look like in their house. You're doing the visualization for them. And that's what you have to do. That's why big companies like this, they always have everything staged up. That way that the customer can visualize what it would actually look like in their setting. So of course, do not try to compete with Kirkland. Do not try to get $140 out of this, because you will not get it. And this is something that you're going to want to sell, because out of one fence picket, you can make this. That's a $2 cost to you. I wouldn't do just the brown. I would offer multiple different options. Do the distressed white, even the teal. The teal colors are coming in with a distressed background. So put your twist to it, and you'll have no problem selling these things for $30 or $40 a piece. And this next one is from the Pottery Barn, the PB. Remember, we're just going to say PB. So this is my version. Didn't go quite as dark. One fence picket, that's what this took. They want $80. This cost me $2. We're making this out of fence pickets. I'm going to cut 3 boards down to 16.5 inches long. So next I'm going to draw a 12-inch star out. Now I'm going to put this actually onto a piece of cardboard. That way I can cut it out and use it as a template to make multiples. Once you get your template, just trace that out in the center. Again, these are not connected, and then we will just take a jigsaw and cut these pieces out. Once you have your star all cut out, it's time to put the trim on, and go ahead and stain, paint, do whatever you you would like to do to that before you put that on. This is what is going to be holding everything together. It is as simple as that. And you saw how easy that was. And again, this is one fence picket. They're selling them for $80 a piece. I'm thinking that you can get $20 or $30 a piece out of these, because what makes it different is the shape being made with the negative space and you not actually cutting out the shape. Every time I do videos like this, I get asked if I have plans for these type of builds. I typically do not. So for this one, since it is pretty cool, I'm going to make a cheap little plan, throw it in my Etsy shop, and I'll actually include a 12-inch printable template for this star. I'll make sure to link that into the description for anybody that's interested. This would be an awesome money maker because it is an evergreen type of a product, which means that it can sell year round. So for right now, you can decorate this up for fall if you would like. You can do fall colors, paints, things like that, but just make sure that you have plenty of different display options for the customer to choose from. Then this next one is interesting because, again, I've seen it on multiple sites, so this is in. Remember how I told you that Pottery Barn was the only place on earth that could sell a stick? Well, they're not. There's a lot of places selling these, and you need to try to sell these. It's all that they have done is taking a dry limb. So if you know anyone that sells firewood that actually has firewood, hit them up because they will not care at all to get rid of some of the small stuff. These are the limbs, okay? That's all that they are doing is they're making rounds. These rounds make perfect little coasters. But what I've seen a lot of people doing with these different styles is that they are using them for decorations. So the possibility of free wood can be made into a $50 or $60 wreath. You can just glue these things together in a round. I put a little something behind it just to support the circle design. That's all that this is a dried branch. And I've seen tons of things like this. Weddings are going crazy for this, and that's all that I did was went to my firewood pile, pulled out a log, a little piece, and cut it on the miter saw. If you want larger ones and you do not have a chainsaw or you're not comfortable using one, I'm sure that you know someone that does. Hit them up for some couple-inch thick slabs. People are paying a fortune for this stuff. It is firewood. You sand it, you throw a little finish on it, then it is a decoration. And that is exactly what Pottery Barn has done with this. This is just a round. 80 bucks. You can buy this. To me, it is just firewood that has been cleaned up. And a lot of people think that just because wood ends up in the firewood pile that it is not any good, that it's cheap wood. That is actually the opposite of the case in most situations, because if someone is selling firewood, they are in with a logger of some type. And what do loggers want? They want money trees. They're going after oak, walnut, cherry, but these pieces are too small for them. They cannot make lumber out of it. And that's how it ends up in the burn pile. So something slated to be burnt, selling for 79 bucks. As easy as this was to make, it literally took me about 5 minutes. I'd make a set of these, maybe sell them for $15, $20 a piece, and people will love them. Make a post of these staged up, different sizes, shined up like this, and actually put on their wedding decor. These are huge right now for weddings, especially fall weddings. Larger ones are great for cake plates, and the smaller ones are good for decorations on tables. Firewood, you're actually taking trash and turning it into cash. That was a little corny. But I actually didn't mean for it to come out like that, but it rhymed and it just went with it. We all know that cutting boards have been in for a while, but the PB must have noticed that there was a decrease in sales of that current design and they shook it up. They changed it to this. This is actually pretty cool. This is thinking outside of the box. It's clean. And it's super simple to make. And this is not inlaid in. If I actually zoomed in and looked at this, that's all that they've done is made their original square cutting board. And then that's all that you have to do is cut it. So those strips of wood that are going horizontal, those are glued in after they have cut this board. So they've taken their cutting board, they've cut it into 3 sections, then inserted the 1 or 2 inch strips going horizontal and glued it back together. That's it. And that's what gave it this cool creative look. These are hot right now because they're doing it in every shape and every design. So make sure to jump on this. Remember, we jump on what's hot right now. This is another example without the paint so you can actually see what's going on underneath. Same thing. That's all they're doing is slicing their cutting boards and then adding a strip, gluing everything back together. Once it's glued, give it a final sand down for these. Ready to roll. And the PB is actually selling these right now for $159 for the larger one. So depending on the size and the type that you make, price it accordingly. You know what they're getting out of it. Don't try to get anything near that. But check that out and see how that they made all these different shapes. These are considered cheese boards, okay? So they're getting away from charcuterie and all that stuff. These are cheese boards now. Last week they were charcuterie boards. This week they're cheese boards because charcuterie is going out, cheese boards are coming in. Super easy to make, and there is a ton of money to be made off of these, especially if you sell them in sets. Be known for being creative with what you build and what you do, and you will have people coming to you for all kinds of things. I love builds like this where simple concepts and the creativity behind them create its value. So this first one is an outdoor gift set from Kirkland's. This gift set, if you would like it right now, is $100 for a set of 3. The kicker is 4 fence pickets will build, that's 3, learn to count. 4 fence pickets will build those. And that's exactly what they built these out of. So if you zoom in and look, they are straight up fence pickets. I know you guys are getting tired of me saying use fence pickets. Well, the reason why I keep saying it is because they're still cheap. They're still $2 for a treated fence picket in my area. Pine, 72 inches long, 5.5 inches wide. And that's exactly what they used, and the reason why they used it, because it's a treated picket. It's treated material. This is made to go outside. The tall cube is 10 inches. The second one is 8 inches. And the small one is 6 inches. And this all came from their description. So at night, this thing actually lights up. That's all that they have done is drilled random holes in the sides of this cube once that they have made it, and then put Christmas lights on the inside of this box. You see that little white thing down in the bottom corner of this? That is a battery-powered string of mini lights. Got on Amazon, check this stuff out. If you bought 12 of those string lights with the little battery pack and all of that, it's $12. So it makes it $1 a piece. So the material will cost you $8. The little light's going to cost you $1. And then whatever it costs just for the decoration on top. So you're still right around $10 for this complete set that they are selling for $100. These things would be super easy to build, to slap together. They're going for this rustic look. It's all butt joint, so very simple. Glue, brad nail, go to town. They're wanting $100 for this. You can put $40 or $50 on a set of these. You have $10 in it. They'll sell. And this next one, I think is from Macy's or someplace like that, but it is just a very crudely built lantern. So it's rustic. And that's all that they have done is they've taken material that looks like fence pickets to me, ripped it down to about 3/4 of an inch, and crudely glued and nailed this together. So this pre-lit festive lantern that probably took about 1/4 of a fence picket to make, you can pick it up for $80. So the most expensive thing in something like this is going to be the greenery that you would put in the bottom, but you can pick this stuff up for cheap right now. It's like they have intentionally made this to look like it was handmade by a small child. Even the handle, the arch, you can see where it was just jigsawed out, and what connects it to the top, which is just another little flat board, is just little cutoffs, and that's all that they have done is put a screw, most likely before they glued it down to the top of this, through the cutoff into the handle. That way it would pivot a little bit, and then wherever the arch ended up, that's where they glued it down. That way your measurements do not have to be precise. I know we've talked a lot about staging, and this staging actually looks plain, but it is very clean. I like this staging because the item itself actually has thin rails. You do not want a bunch of things in the background to take away from that. So with this very plain background, they're actually trying to highlight that it was built in a rustic way by showing you all of these simple joints without a bunch of things in the background taking away from that. So for this item, it is perfect staging, and it would make an awesome table centerpiece. Okay, so this next one is a wall plaque, and it's actually a little bit deceiving. So you're like, $50, that's really not bad. But let me tell you how they made this for probably less than $5. The little wreath in the middle, that's going to be your most expensive part, and they're cheap right now. But what makes this plaque interesting, if you took the wreath off and looked at the background, it looks like that it would be very intricate. This is what's going to keep other people from making these, because you can actually see like a diamond, like a large diamond shape. You can see like an X shape. It just looks like it's a lot of different mitered cuts and a lot of work, but it actually is not. So the frame itself is just a frame. 45-degree angles. Looks like to be about 2 inches wide, maybe 1.5 inches. Those inside slats, I'm gonna say that they're about 3/4 of an inch wide. If you look really close, they have made this webbing, and then they've set the frame on top, and then they have nailed the frame to the top. So all of those slats are underneath of that frame. So they're not mitering anything into the frame itself. So to get this design, it's almost an optical illusion on the complexity of it. This is exactly the key to making this whole design. This is fence picket material. This was scraps. I just now made these. I cut 50-degree miters on these. You could do whatever that you would like. So the bottom of this is going to be the M for Matthew. And then you would put a W on top, and that makes the diamond shapes. You see where I'm going with it? So as you work your way up this build, all of these diamond patterns will start to connect, You know, with your next one, then you have the double diamond, and it will actually make it look like there's a very large diamond in the middle and also an X in the background. It's an optical illusion, and that's all that it is strips like this that I've just CA glued together. It's as simple as that. And this next one really caught my eye because I could see it as being a big seller. And after you make your first one, it would be super simple to make. So I decided to make one. This is the one that I came up with. I put my own twist to it, but used the same concept. So I made this tree using one fence picket, and it is not small. It is 21 inches tall and 14 inches across at the base. The one thing that I did not like about their build is that all of the different parts are stapled on. So let me show you how I made this for $2. So I'm going to start out just by sketching out my tree onto a piece of cardboard. And I'm going to use this cardboard as my template. Once this is done, I'll cut my stencil out and then lay pieces of fence picket or pallet wood across the stencil, and I will square cut to the lengths that I need in order to make the design that I want. Once those are cut, I will place the stencil on top of those and then trace that out. So once the image is transferred over to the material, I take a jigsaw and I'll cut off all the unneeded material one piece at a time. Once I had all the parts cut, I went ahead and applied the stains that I wanted before assembly. And for the assembly itself, I just used glue. I did not like the fact that they used staples, so I glued all of my sections together. So any part that is touching another piece of wood needs wood glue. And now to make the base and the support bracket. The base is just two 8-inch boards that are glued together and nailed. And for the support bracket, I'm just using a 3-inch board that is 12 inches long and essentially making an L. I'll then attach my support bracket to my base using screws, and then I'll attach the support bracket from behind using glue and screws. And it's as simple as that. And that's how simple it is to take a $2 piece of wood and turn it into something like this. I know I had to speed through that just to fit it into this video, but if anyone is interested, I actually have build plans for this. I'll make sure to link that into the description, and included with that plan is the actual template that you can print out and tape together to make this exact shape and dimension of tree. And like I said, this will be a super seller. So for $2, you can mass produce these things. They want $50 for theirs. I will be pricing mine for around $30, and I will not have any issues selling them at that price point. And so this next one is another one from the PB. As you can tell by the price, $300 for this sign. And it is actually a rather large sign. Pretty cool idea. Some of the other pictures, they actually show it like over doors. So that's why I decided to throw this in here, is because it's a cool idea and something like this will sell. So what they have done is they have put this stencil on a very thin piece of metal. We're going to make ours out of wood, and we're going to make it for less than $10. So this would be another example of using these stencils. So if you've watched the video on our Christmas tree collars that we made, you know how we use those larger stencils for that? You would use that kind of stencil for this as well, because this is a 24 by 48. So actually a pretty large sign, but instead of using the metal, we are going to be using wood. So we're going to sand down 4 fence pickets, and then we're going to make our frame. 45s on the edges, and then bring it down just a hair just to maximize our material. So we're going to make it 22 by 48. And you can bring it in if you want 22 by 46, whatever. But this will allow you to take one picket, cut it into 3 sections, and you can get 3 sections out of a 72-inch picket, and we will actually be running them vertically. So you'll need 9 of those 5.5-inch pickets, and then you can set your frame on top and nail all of that together. So they've used a vintage white spray-on paint. Spray paint the whole thing, let it dry. We're going to place our stencil where we want it on our sign, cheap paintbrush, and brush the stencil. So it will naturally be lighter in some areas, darker in some. So instead of just spray painting and you get all these nice, clean, sharp edges, you use the brush in the stencil, this is what you get. If it's too dark, take some high grit sandpaper, sand it down until it gets this faded farmhouse look. And the way that we're doing it, by running our pickets vertical like that, it's going to give it a much more of an appealing look than this. So like I mentioned before, you can pick these stencils up really cheap on Amazon. They're selling these for $300 a piece, but you can make this for around $8. And this next one is from one of my favorite places on earth, the old PB or the Pottery Barn. And I know I give them a hard time, but they are actually geniuses at what they do, because they can get prices like this for this recycled Merry Christmas sign. And I'm going to show you something here a little bit later in the video that they're selling right now that's going to blow your mind. But I'm going to show you what I'm talking about how these evil geniuses' minds work. But it's actually pretty good stuff. You know, I make fun of them, but they're selling this stuff. So this sign, it's a piece of wood. Really, it's melamine. It's not even a piece of wood. It's melamine with a veneer on top. So you can either take a wider piece of wood and do this, or you can join together a few pieces of wood, pallet wood, whatever type of wood that you would like to make this sign. We had talked about stencils before, how cheap that you can pick them up on Amazon. So what they have done, this is actually not a stencil on top, it is actually carved into the wood. But let me tell you a super easy way to do this. Take your stencil and spray it onto your board. Just spray paint, that's fine. Take that off, take a Dremel tool with a wood removal bit on that, and just remove anything that you have stenciled. So you're actually removing the painted stencil that you just put on. You do not have to go very deep with this. Even a 1/16 of an inch will work for what we're about to do. So you just take off the surface, basically until the paint is gone. And then once that is gone, I want you to paint the whole board, whatever color that you would like. So white in this case. So you paint the whole board white and sand it back off. But because you have removed the material of your stencil, it is going to be below the surface. And whenever you sand this off, that will stay. And in any part of the board that is below the surface, it keeps the white tint. So you have your carved out stencil, and you also get that rustic look from the paint going down into any of the grain that is lower than the surface. So this is great. This is super easy to build. They're selling them for 89 bucks a piece. The pricing will be up to you, but these are going to be super simple to make with a super cool effect of the wording actually being recessed into the wood. I was going to show you how to build this one, but that's a vine from Pottery Barn for 120 bucks. Not going to do it. I went out to the woods, got poison ivy. It's just not worth it. Let's go to the next one. So this next one would be a piece of pie to make, as long as it's not pumpkin pie. So these little trees for a set of 3, they're wanting $35. But what would make these sell is the distressing. So it's really not the shape itself. You know, you can draw out your little tree or something like that, put it on a 2x4 and take a jigsaw and just cut that out. But before you start adding your paint, whenever you are sanding this, you need to rough the edges up. So this is not just flat edges. It actually looks like it has waves and dents into that. So to get that look when you're sanding, so ever so often make sure to hit the edges and it will give it that rough cut dented look. They're trying to make this look like it was cut out by hand, old school, with an actual hand saw. So that's all that they have done for the painting, is they had put a base layer of white down, and then onto the trees they put a green and a red top coat on that. Once that is all dry, sand this down and you will get heavier and lighter with your sanding depending on how much of the base layer that you want to come out. Another distressing technique that would help you to get this look would be using Vaseline. So you put your base coat down, take a paintbrush, put some Vaseline in places that you do not want your top coat to stick to. So by using a cheap paintbrush, it will actually give it that brushed, distressed look. And then whenever you apply your top coat, the top coat will not stick to that Vaseline. So as this paint dries, let it dry completely, and then you can wipe the top, and anything that was over the Vaseline will wipe right off, exposing the base coat. And then you can take your sander and kind of blend that in. For a build that is this easy and this cheap to do, you can afford to play around with it a little bit. And the next one that we're going to talk about, you have already seen at the beginning of our video. It is the cheese board that is inspired by the old PB. And if you do not want to make your own, you can run by the PB and pick one up starting at $100 for a 14-inch cheese board. That is the cheapest one that they make, and they go all the way up to $170. And I actually like this concept so well, I decided to make my own and to teach you how to make it step by step. And this is what I came up with. This is my 14-inch version of what they would charge $100 for. And you could insert any type of wood that you would like. I chose just the cedar because I used a cedar fence picket. So in my area, the cedar pickets are twice as much as the pine, so it actually cost me $4 for this board. And the bonus is that out of that exact same picket that we use for this, you can get this one. This would be more like a wall plaque, whatever you would like to call it. You can hang it on the wall, you can set it up as a decoration, they could put it outside. You can paint or stain these things up however that you would like. The only thing that I did here, I put some painter's tape on here and then put a stain over the top of that. So I already know that they're wanting $100 for this little cheese board, but if just this plaque was on the same site or another site like that, I guarantee you that at minimal, they would be charging at least $100 for this. I'm not saying that that's what you need to do. I'm just trying to think outside of the box and show you the potential of a $4 board. Okay, so to start with, I've cut my fence picket down into 3 17-inch boards that are 5 inches wide. You'll have a 20-inch board left over, but hang on to that because we'll be using that later for some trim. Now just lay out a tree design to use as a stencil for your 3 boards. Place your cutout stencil onto your boards, make sure everything is squared up, and trace it out. To cut this out with a jigsaw, make sure you have a sharp tip blade, not a rounded blade, because we're going to be doing a plunge cut. Basically, you just start your cut at an angle and slowly rotate the saw down as you make your cut. It's actually really easy, and it'll allow us to keep nice sharp edges for our wall plaque. Once all of your outlined parts have been cut, they're ready for a light sanding and to be glued up. I'll be using regular wood glue and just clamp these babies together until they're dry. So while they're drying, go ahead and take the leftover board that we talked about earlier and cut it into a 1-inch strip and 4 3/4 strips. Whoa, there's that creepy guy again. Anyway, now is the time to paint or stain both of your projects and get creative. Now let's finish out this plaque. Remember those strips I told you to cut? That is going to be used for the trim. And we're just going to 45 the edges, glue, and tack those down. And look, there's a peach tree. Okay, back to work. Okay, so for the remaining 1-inch strip that I had you to cut earlier, we are just going to find the location that we would like these strips on the boards, cut at 30-degree angles, trace those out onto the board, and then we're going to cut those sections out. Now all we need to do is glue these parts back together, clamp, and let dry. And it's as simple as that. 1 picket, 2 projects, and they'd actually make for a great combo. So get creative. It's as easy as that, guys. For the plunge cut, if you're not comfortable with that, make sure to watch some other videos on how to do plunge cuts, but you just walk the blade down until it sinks in. If you have not done that technique before, make sure to practice on a couple of scrap boards before you do it on this. And as far as selling these things, so the reason why that they have sold this as a cheese board is because that it is painted. So it's more like a charcuterie board. They're just calling it a cheese board because charcuterie boards have been beat to death and are going out. So that's all you need to do is once you get finished is put a hard wax onto the top of this, a food grade wax. You could market this as a cheese board. I would probably make a full set, make the 3 different sizes, and actually sell the full set for around $100. They're running $100 for the one, and I do not think that you're going to have any issues getting $100 out of a set of these. As far as the plaque, it would actually make awesome wall decor. You could put a little hanger on the back, or it would be perfect for putting on someone's entry door or above their entry door. 17 inches wide by 15 inches tall. If you took the time to actually paint it up a little bit, I would at least try to sell this for around $40 or $50. If you left it completely plain, maybe a little bit less. But regardless of what you decide to set your price point at, keep in mind you have $4 in both of these combined in wood material. You cannot beat that. This is a home run. Okay, so this next one, this 8-piece wooden plaque set. I'm not for sure exactly what a plaque set is, but I'm assuming that it's just a decoration that you just set around. It is $109. I'm going to assume that they're going to use some 2-inch material if they're planning on this stuff setting on its edge, so no big deal. So buy a 2x4, 2x6, square it up, cut the round sides off. So we're going to be using the same technique that we did for the sign with the stencils. You'll actually spray your stencil on, carve that out, spray whatever color that you would like to be into the indentation, in this case white, over the top of the whole thing. Let that dry and then sand it all off. And again, you do not have to go down very far with your Dremel tool. You do not have to remove much material. If you just go down far enough to remove your stencil, it will be below the surface of this wood, and when you're sanding, you will not remove the design. They try to make it look super complicated when it's actually super easy. So they're wanting $110 for this set. I mean, come on, guys. Sell them for 30 or 40 bucks a set and go on. Easy money. So here's another quick one from the PB. It's just a decoration set around the house, and they've made this rustic sled. And they have intentionally made it super rustic. Everything on here is cut out with a jigsaw. It is 19.5 inches long. So they've used 2x4 material on the bottoms, and on the sides and top, that's all that they've used is some thinner material. So you can even freehand these parts out onto a fence picket. Let's say these bottom runners. You'll just draw it out at the 19 inches, curve it up, and then cut it out with a jigsaw. And if you look at this, you can actually tell where there's thicker and thinner parts of these rails. That is the look that they are going for. And then they just notched the 2x4s and set them on top of the runners and did the same thing with picket or pallet type material for the top. This would be a super easy build. They're selling them for 89 bucks. Once you would get one of these knocked out, you could probably make 10 in a few hours. And so this is the one that just kind of blew my mind. I'm not saying do this. You can do it if you want. So let me show you exactly what the OPB did, and it's charging $5 a piece for this. For this one, we'll have to head outside. And that'll be $5, please. In all reality, they are selling these. So not only is it the only place on earth that can sell a stick, they can sell a pine cone on a shish kebab or a piece of wire. Is what it is. But they're selling these things or it wouldn't be on their site. I'm not telling you to make these, but I'm just proving a point that this place can literally sell anything. Pine cone on a stick. Okay, so this one I threw in there because, again, this is more of a modern design that blew my mind because it's so stinking simple. This is a two-piece wall shelf that costs $120 at Pier 1. Not bad for two shelves, right? But if you look at the dimensions of this thing, it's 1.5 inches thick, it's 5 inches wide, and each one of these shelves have 42 linear inches total in each one. So that means that they have taken one 2x6, which right now is $6.98. I just looked it up, and made two shelves out of one board and left it natural. So they've taken a $7 board and turned it into a $120 set. So it looks like that there are two different designs of shelves here. That's all that they have done is flipped one over. So you're going to make these identical. The two sides in the middle, those are 6-inch boards with 45-degree ends. So the horizontal boards come out to a total of 24 inches. So I'm going to guess that the longest board is around 16 inches and the top board is going to be around 8 inches. So that'll give us our 24 inches. And the rest is 45s. As far as joining this together, it's all that they have done is glued. I've zoomed in, I've looked, there's no joinery unless that they have used some type of dowel joinery on the inside, which you can do that. If it were me, I would have some type of joinery in this and not just glue because it's going to be hanging on the wall and you're going to be putting different stuff on it. So what I would do, I would glue this, clamp it, let it dry, and then actually drill a hole, let's say a 1/4 inch hole per peg going all the way through the corner. All the way through, run like a walnut dowel rod or something like that through there. Cut that off, you could actually have those walnut dowels showing. So you wouldn't have to have any special type of joinery tool. If you have a biscuit joint or something like that, you definitely can use that. But by drilling a hole through that corner, gluing in these walnut dowels, it's going to add a different type of a look to it. To me, it would be a nicer look than just a 2x6 hanging on the wall that's cut at 45s. As far as how these are hung, it doesn't even actually say. But I'm going to say that since this is so simply built, that they've just used some heavier duty hardware to hang this on the wall. Okay, so this next one, this is some wall art. And I know that we have covered this in the past, but this time I'm actually going to show you exactly how easy that it is to make this. And the reason why is because this is trending. This keeps popping up, of course, different colors, different designs, but it keeps popping up over and over and over. So this style here, they're wanting $152 for a set of 3, but they're small. These things are only 14 inches square a piece, and each one can be made out of one fence picket or pallet wood or whatever that you would like to use. So essentially for $6, you can make something that they're selling a set of for $150. And these things are really neat. But where the creativity comes in is the different colors, different color schemes and the different patterns. Almost every one that I've seen, everything is based on 45-degree angles, just making different shapes. But trust me, these things are hot. They're on every big box store site in some form or fashion. So you always take that as a sign that these things are selling and they're selling a lot of them. So let me show you just how easy it is to make these things. I can tell by looking at the photo that this whole build was made out of 2-inch material. So first I'm going to start by ripping down 2-inch planks, and I'm going to use a fence picket, but this would be a perfect pallet wood project. After you get your 2-inch strip down, decide on how big this project is going to be. So whatever size that you'd like your wall plaque to be. So I actually had a 13x13 piece of 1/4 inch plywood laying around, so I'm going to use that. Once you have your plywood cut into a square, you're going to mark center in all directions. This will give you a guide to work from. The next thing that you're going to do is start placing in your parts. Every part in this design is 45 degrees, and that's pretty much common for most of these styles of designs. They're just going different directions. And we are going to start from the inside and work our way out. So once you have your backing marked and your first 2 pieces cut, you're actually going to put it on your board, making sure that you trace it out for reference. So since we know that this is a 2x2, I want the inside of my next board to be 2 inches. So I'll cut the insides for all 4 of these at 2 inches. So now that you have those cut, you'll measure the outside of the boards that you just put in, which will be 6 inches. You'll make your next cuts with the inside of the 45s at 6 inches. So now that we have all those boards in place, we're getting to our outside edges. Now it's not quite as important to put 45s on because we're getting to the point where we're going to be cutting the edges off anyways. We just want to make sure that we have enough that overhangs our base. I'm going to cut this one at 10 inches square, that way I don't have to mess with the angles. So now with those boards in place, that's all that I have to do is continue this until all of our backing is covered. It's time to actually stain these parts up. Stain, paint, whatever you like to do. But before I do anything, I'm going to mark my boards. I'm going to mark them the colors that I want them. So I can use that reference whenever I'm painting or staining. Then I can flip the board over and actually paint the unmarked side. Once we get this done, we can go ahead and glue and nail our parts to our board. So once you have all of your parts glued and nailed to your board, now you just need to cut your square back out. If it's small enough, you can do this on a sliding miter saw, or you can do this on a table saw. Once you have that done, you can trim it out if you'd like, or you can just finish the ends. And it's as simple as that, guys. That's all that these things are 45-degree cuts, painted a certain way and marketed as wall art. And here's another example of where they're just selling a bigger one. This is a 24 by 24 piece of wall art that they're selling for $100. This thing's only 3/4 of an inch thick, so they're using some 1/2 inch material and probably just, like I did in the video, glued it to a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. So what I would do with these is throw in some different colors. It seems like the lighter faded colors are getting really popular. This is a perfect example of how you can take some of your scrap material that's only 2 inches wide and make something that will sell for big bucks. This one is from the old P1. That's what I'm gonna start calling it now. But the P1, not to be confused with the PB, is selling this ladder for $150. Ladders have always been hot. They're always in for a restroom. People love to throw their towels on there. In this case, a blanket. I don't know why you need a blanket in a bathroom, but whatever. But they are always hot. So you need to make different styles of these things. So we've talked about in the past making different types of towel ladders for bathrooms, but this one caught my eye because of what it is actually made out of. For the side rails, that's all they have done is taken little skinny trees. By the way that the knots are falling, it looks like some type of little evergreen tree or something like that. And they've debarked it. They've taken all of that bark off. They've let that dry. They've done the same thing with the rungs going across. So if you're in an area that has some type of big evergreen trees that the branches have fallen off and the wood is already dry, you can knock that bark off, smooth it up really well, and that's all that they have done is used a whitewash stain on this. For the rungs, that's all that they have done is carved this down to a little bit of a point. That will take a couple of minutes. They actually make tools that you can chuck up to a drill to do that, but it wouldn't take any time to do it by hand and give it more of an authentic look, because that is what they're going for. They're going for this old handmade rustic look from the 1800s and then make it look modern. They have crudely drilled holes into the sides of the uprights, added wood glue, and clamped that baby together. And that's it. That's what they've done for this. It's 18 inches wide, and they are wanting $150 for something that you can pick up out in the woods. And I like to make fun of things like this, but that is actually a really good idea. It's something that you can potentially get for free, put in a little bit of work, and make a nice profit out of it. If I was selling something like this, I would sell it for maybe 60, 70 bucks. Okay, so for this next one, this is a PB floating shelf. It is 4 foot long, and they are wanting $250 for this. Does this look familiar? Yes, I already have a full video teaching you how to make these. Check out that video, but apparently these are charging back up because this was another bestseller. But now they're going to more of this clean rustic, so the modern rustic look. Replicate that. They've done their homework, they've done the number crunching, all of the stuff that they do to decide to carry these things, and they're carrying them and they're selling them for $250 a piece. In the video, I go over the distressing techniques and all of that. So you would just lighten it up for this. You wouldn't even have to distress it. That's all that you would have to do is maybe round the edges over where you have 45 everything to make your box. And then you would just stain this thing up. So they're coming out with some pretty cool different stains. So this looks like to me that it's more of a light gray stain. And that's actually a color that is in right now, are the grays. So try some out in that color. Try some out in like a whitewashed color. So again, we're going for this modern rustic. Now, yes, you can do the distressed look. You can do the rustic look, but also mix in this modern rustic that we have something to show and something to offer for everyone's taste. So for this one, it looks like that the old PB is back at it again. And this is a 4-inch candle holder, but this is not a normal candle holder. This is a $100 candle holder. They want $100 for this thing. It's 12 inches tall, including the candle. What they've done for the wooden base It is alternating shapes. And it's all that they have done for the wooden parts at the bottom. They are 2 inches thick and they have made a hexagon. So that's all you would have to do is take your miter saw, bandsaw, jigsaw, whatever that you have, and cut a square into a 6-sided shape, okay? So it's super easy to lay out, but what they've done to make it look like each level is different, or an alternating level, is the depth of the cut. So you notice the very bottom one, you have a lot wider face. The next one up, it's not quite as wide, but each one of these pieces still only has 6 sides. So that's all that they've done is move their saw out a little bit. And let's say for the second one, they have left a little bit of meat around the edges there and just made a shallower cut. The next one up is the exact same as the bottom one, and then the top one is the exact same as the second one. You just inset the top a little bit with a Forstner bit or some type of a hole saw, and then the globe you can probably pick up at the Dollar General or Walmart for next to nothing. I do not like the color of this, just this natural color with some type of a glaze over it. I think that it would look a lot better if it was painted in rustic colors for each level, but you could actually offer this style as well as those other styles. If the grain of the wood turns out really nice, then just use this style. But keep in mind, you want to make several different styles because, like we have discussed before, not everyone likes that rustic farmhouse look, but you need to provide that with everything that you do because it is hot right now. So have a clean, modern look, but also have that rustic distressed look. Have a look for everyone. Okay, so check this out. $299, and it's not for the dresser. It's not for the bed. It's for the pile of sticks that's hanging off the wall. $300 for a pile of sticks. Okay, so I'm not saying go out there and make this pile of sticks and glue them together and sell them as wall art. But I'm using this as an example of really what people will buy. Now, you can go out there and do this if you'd like. I mean, take your pocket knife and skin down some oak dead wood and glue it together and make a rat nest like this. But I can pretty much guarantee you if you put it on the local market, you're not going to get your 300 bucks out of that. So for this first one, this is going to be an example of wall art. This is pretty cool, but is it $206.99 cool? I don't know where they get the 99 cents. I don't know. It's like you're buying gas or something. But this is one from Wayfair. I need to come up with a nickname for Wayfair because they actually have a lot of cool ideas. I'm just going to call it, we'll just call it WF. This is from the Wayfair, the WF, and this is what they are considering a geometrical wall art. It's not like the other geometrical stuff that we've seen, but they're actually calling this geometric wall art. So basically what they're doing is they're layering different color strips. So we have our long strips going down the center, and then we have our arrows, okay? So those arrows are just 45-degree angles. So that's it. That's the only angles that you would have to cut to make this. And they did not even cut that because if you actually zoom in a little bit and look at these angles, there's no seams and the grain is still going the same direction. So this is cut out of plywood. For a $207 piece of wall art, they're using plywood. And they're using thin plywood. So this thing is 16 by 32 inches long and 1.5 inches thick. So that tells me that the boards are 1/2 inch thick each, and they're about 2 inches wide. So to start with, you just make all of your gray 45-degree arrows that you see in the background. And remember, they're 16 inches wide. Make sure to put the 45s on the opposite end to get that 16-inch width. And the next layer is going to be the white boards. And I would attach these with wood glue and just brad nails. And the third layer is going to be the brown arrows that are on top. So for the trim, this is 1.5 inches thick, but it looks like it covers the material about 1 inch. I don't know if you have priced any type of edge trimming at the store here lately, but just like your normal 45-degree edge trimming in a solid wood, it's $3 or $4 a foot. It's ridiculous. So make your own. This is what you need to make. So we have 1.5 inches that would sit on the side, and then we also have our inch that would cover the edges. Super easy to make. I made this in the table saw right before making this video, and I started with just a 2x2 that I cut out of a 2x4. Could have made it even smaller because I did not have to use the whole thing. That's all you have to do is determine how thick you want it. I left it 1/4 inch, and raise your blade enough to cut a square out of the middle. Piece of pie to make, and it will save you a ton of money. And that's if you decided to make trim like this, you wouldn't even have to. And if you'd like to just take flat stock, put it around the edges, it would look perfectly fine. But this is what's going to seal the deal to make it fancy. Now, will you get $207 for it? No, don't try to get 207 bucks for it. Will you get $75 for it? That's what I'll go for. And this next one is another one from the WF. And what caught my eye about this one was not only the price, but it was actually pretty neat. And so this is a $200 jewelry holder that spins. And if you look at it, what's it look like to you? Looks like just a couple of pieces of wood that are spinning. So that little spinny action is what's making this thing $200. I don't care if it spins and does a backflip off the table. It's not worth $200. So the spinning mechanism that they're using is actually a custom made one. It's just mounted to that bottom board, and then it's a rod that goes up into that board. But I figured out a workaround for that. Looks like everything here is made out of 2x10s. 2x10s right now in my area are $10 a piece, and you can make a couple of these out of one board. So you would distress up your material however that you would like it, stain it, paint it, whatever. But to make this rotating effect, we're going to be using Lazy Susan parts. Not like the Lazy Susans that you put your canned goods and mixers and stuff like that on, but they're actually smaller ones for like tabletop Lazy Susans, you know, where like instead of saying pass me the salt, you know, you can just spin the little thing in the middle and it goes around. Anyway, so those parts are dirt cheap. I actually found some on Amazon. So any of the parts for any of these items that I mentioned, I will throw a link into the description so you can check for them there. These Lazy Susan parts, I actually found a place that is selling 2 of these for $6.50. This is what they look like. The difference is they're square on both sides, whereas this is a rod. So let's say that you get the 4-inch Lazy Susan part, and we're going to need a 4-inch board to go across the bottom of the width of the vertical board. So let's say that this is 9.5 inches wide. We're going to need a 4-inch board that goes across the bottom and is 9.5 inches wide. So you'll have a board sitting like this with your 2x10 on the top that's matching each edge. This will allow you to fasten your Lazy Susan here, and the base in this picture is about 15 inches long. But when you set this down on the base, it will allow the Lazy Susan parts to stick out enough whenever you turn it to actually get some screws in there. And that is a workaround for the actual spinning effect for this thing. Now, the one thing that I do not like about this is the hangers. So all of these wires that are sticking out kind of reminds me of an old cheap store. I know that they're going for the rustic look, but you don't want to have to get a tetanus shot after you get your jewelry. So what I would do is maybe get something like this. So these are little bronze hooks, and this package actually comes with 100 of them. So that brings the price down to about 16 cents a piece. So on this picture, they have 24 different areas to actually hang different types of jewelry on. That's only about $3.80 worth of hooks. Another option that I like to do when I'm making anything that hangs jewelry, coats, just anything that's kind of nice, go to your local Hobby Lobby. They run sales all the time on stuff like this. So these little knobs, they have a whole section on drawer pulls, and whenever they go 50% off, they're only like $1.50 a piece. This one's actually porcelain, but you put these maybe 4 per side for necklaces or things like that, and it would really set this thing off. And you can get them to look vintage, you can get them to look however that you would like. But the bottom line is that you can build this thing for less than 12 bucks, and they're wanting $200 for it. The Farmhouse calendars. Again, these things caught my eye because they're pretty cool. And I would actually have one in my house. So after seeing their version and the $60 price tag, I decided to do what I teach and make it myself. Put my own twist to it. And this is how it came out. Super cool. You can just slide these over to the date. And these old looking label cabinet pulls. Really cool, but you can just slide them over to whatever that you would like. So before we jump into this video, what I did not like about this one was the screws in the front. So this is supposed to be a vintage farmhouse calendar, and they use brass Phillips head screws all down the front. Made sure to change that up, and also did a couple other things, as you'll see in the video, to make this easier to assemble. In this video, I'll be teaching you step by step on how to make these, but as always, if you are a plans in the hand type of person, head over to the Etsy shop. The link's in the description. I have super detailed plans for these already up. Okay, so to start with, we're going to cut our 2x4x4 in half. Then I'm going to take 1/8 of an inch off of each edge just to square the boards up. We'll set one of those boards aside because that will be our base, and then we'll start by cutting 2 3/8 of an inch thick strips off of the remaining board. Next, take the board that's left and rip it down into 2 1-inch strips. So all of our parts so far are still 1.5 inches wide, and we are needing 2 1x1 and 3 1-inch by 3/8 inch thick strips. So where the saw is still set at 1 inch, just turn all of your material on its side and cut off that extra 1/2 of an inch. Now let's cut our 2 uprights down to 14 inches long and our 3 strips down to 20 inches long. The base needs to be cut to 21 inches long and then ripped in half. So with all of our parts cut, let's go ahead and start the assembly by marking out where our notches need to be in our uprights. The notches will need to be 1 inch wide and 3/8 deep to hold our strips. And I want my first strip to be 1/2 of an inch from the top and then 3 inches of spacing in between my last 2 strips. Now we just need to cut our 1 inch by 3/8 inch deep notches. And there's several different ways that you can do this. I'm just using the depth stop on the miter saw, but you can even use a jigsaw. And now we need to cut notches in our 2 base parts. And these are going to be going back together to basically surround a 1x1. So we need to cut 1/2 of an inch deep notches in both pieces on both ends, 1/2 of an inch from each end. So after we have all of our notches cut, let's go ahead and stain or paint all of our parts. Once that dries, we're going to go ahead and reattach our base parts. After applying wood glue, let's go ahead and put our uprights in place and clamp this to dry. While that is drying, go ahead and stamp your dates onto your strips. Don't forget to use even spacing for this. Next, we're just going to glue and clamp our strips into place. Now let's make our sliding viewing windows. For this, I'm going to be using wire staples and label holder pulls. After marking the staples for correct placement, I'm just going to attach the staples to the pulls using CA glue. And this is what it should look like. And you'll repeat this step for the middle slat. But the last slat we're going to do a little bit different. Since the numbers are smaller, the viewing window needs to be a bit smaller. So to fix this, I'm just going to take a paint stick, line the label holder up with the edge, and cut off the end. And then we'll split that in half. Space the wood pieces so that there's a 1/2 inch gap in the middle, and then put CA glue on the outside edges. And that's the last piece to our rustic farmhouse calendar. So not including the stamps, you have around $5 in material for something that they want $60 for. So that video is a perfect example of the profit margins that can be made with something as simple as this. 2 of these out of 1 2x4 just by breaking this down and figuring out exactly how to do it. Now with something like this one is just completely natural, but I also made this one whenever I was making the other one. If you're going to make one, you might as well make 2 or 3. I've told you this before because you're going to have relatives that you didn't know that you had coming out of the woodwork wanting some. So shake it up a little bit. This is just a distressed blue-gray. I'm not sure what the color is. It's robin egg or something. I don't know. It's blue-gray. And then I just distressed it a little bit and gave it that farmhouse look. So the one thing to make these that you're going to have to purchase that I've mentioned in the past for several other projects is a set of stamps. Now they're dirt cheap. Again, links in the description for the ones that I used, but this is what I'm talking about. So total, you're going to have about a $15 investment in the stamp set, but you can use those for multiple projects, not just this one. We've covered several projects where I've said, hey, just go get some rubber stamps and I know what you're thinking. It decreases the profit margin because you spent $15 on a set of stamps. That's not how it works. That is a tool that will, if you want to take it off, you can depreciate it. So you can get 100 projects out of this $15 stamp set, then it's 15 cents for this project. But you have to look at certain items like that as a tool that you will have for several projects to come. Okay, so for this next one, I know that we have talked about serving trays before, but serving trays are hot. They are just changing. So this is a perfect example of that. So now that they have taken this chevron or herringbone look and put it into a serving tray, this thing is super easy to make, and they want $250 for this. This goes back to one of our older videos where we made the herringbone style planters. And if you zoom in and look at this stuff, all the parts in this tray are made out of straight up pallet wood material. So you can make this out of your pallet wood material, and then you have your 2 handles that are on the side. Those handles, I found a 10 pack for $13, so a little over $1 a piece. Now this will have to be put on some sort of backing, and that's what this edge trim is covering. Looks like that the edge trimming is about 3/4 inch thick. If this pallet wood is a 1/2 inch thick, and our actual backing board will need to be a 1/4 inch plywood cut to the size of the tray that you would like to make. And what tipped me off that this was pallet wood is that I zoomed way in and found this. These are fresh staple marks. So someone has actually pulled staples out of this material, and there were several other fresh nail marks. You can tell when a nail hole is fresh or if it's an old one. These are fresh ones, so pallet wood. So to assemble this thing, that's all that you will have to do is take your backboard and lay this out in this herringbone pattern. Don't worry if you go over the edges. Wait until the end and trim all of that off. Don't try to make perfect little cuts. Let it hang off the side and then just take it to your table saw, or even use a skill saw to cut those edges off. But what I would do is glue all of these parts into place, and then once that dries, flip that over and then put some brad nails in the back just for some extra hold. And we've already talked about these handles. They're super easy to install. So the edge trimming looks like it's about a 1/2 inch thick by 3/4 inch wide just to cover that whole edge. And if you actually zoom in and look right here, that's all that they have done is glued and then put a ton of brad nails all the way down through there. And this is a $250 serving tray. But what is making this different? What is giving it this softer look? If you notice through any of the pictures, they're kind of staging it up with lighter colored items. You zoom in here, you can see where they have actually whitewashed this. So whitewash is just a thin down white paint. Or you can buy some white stain. So the white stain is super thin, and that's all that you would have to do is just glaze the top of all of this and then just wipe it off. It's going to hang in any of the saw marks, any of the corners, things like that, and give it this white glazed hue. And then I would just finish it off with a urethane. Now these things are super nice, not $250 nice, at least not in my area, they may be in your area, but check out your market and price these things accordingly. But for less than $5 of material, you can make this $250 trade. Now don't try to sell these things for $250. For $75, people will buy them if you can replicate this look. And while we're talking about the trays, I'm just going to give you this one as one more quick example. So that's all that they have done is kept it simple. They just cleaned this board up, put a nice finish on it, and put 2 of those handles on there. So again, if you buy these handles in bulk, they're only like $1.25 a piece, but there are a ton of different things that you can do with them. So they have about $2.50 in handles. The price of the slab, which this is a small piece and is narrow, and they're wanting $100 for this. So pretty much this shows you that you can put a couple of handles on about anything, and it's a serving tray. And so this one from the WF is actually pretty neat, and it is original. It is actually older wood. So what actually sets this piece off to the point that they can charge $92 for it is that it is actually authentic reclaimed wood. If you zoom in and look at it, it's the real deal. So that's all that they have done is taken a reclaimed 2x4 and then half-lapped each side where they intersect. Just like in the video where we half-lapped these pieces. They did the exact same thing, except these are larger pieces, so you can actually do it with a circular saw. You can do it with a table saw, you can do it with a jigsaw, you can do it with however that you would like. But they're just half-lapped and inset, so this will sit flush against the wall. The natural distressing and aging sets that off, and if you just look around, you can find this type of material, especially 2x4 material, because everyone is wanting the wider stuff. So the 2x4 material either gets tossed to the side or you can pick it up for dirt cheap. Again, this is a super neat item that would be an easy sale or even a fundraiser for your local church. And this next one is from the WF. I'm going to explain this a little bit. So I've always joked around that the PB could sell anything, right? So we talked about how they went out to the firewood pile to make live edge rounds for coasters, cake plates, chargers, whatever, which is actually a good idea. And the WF has actually stepped it up a notch with this sculpture. So after seeing this, I kind of got the idea, hey, I've got a firewood pile. Let's see what I can make. And that's what I came up with. So they're wanting $105 for their hollow firewood sculpture. So I think I'm going to undercut them and I'm going to sell this one for $60. Today only, $60. Useless firewood because it's actually hollow. They have one up the PB. The PB actually used useful firewood. You could burn it to keep warm. So they have taken something that is not even desired to be burnt as firewood and made a sculpture. And so I'm poking fun of them a bit, kind of like I do the PB. But typically when I poke fun at one of these companies, there's usually a lesson that's kind of intertwined with that. And if you made it this far into the video, obviously you like the Smalls That Sell series, so make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. The point of me even showing you this is they are selling these things. Again, they would not take the time to put it on their website, put it on their shelves if they were not selling. So yes, I made fun of this. I think it's actually pretty cool, and it's just a couple sticks put down on a piece of wood. Would I give anything like $105? No, I may use it as a paperweight. But this goes back to, we're not making items that we like. Because I think that this looks crazy does not mean that everyone else thinks that it looks crazy. Obviously, there's a ton of people out there that like this stuff. And that is what I've been trying to tell you about and talk about throughout these episodes. We are not making these items for ourselves, the things that we like. We are making the things that other people like. I'm just using this as an example. And the main takeaway is that everyone looks at something a little bit different. Kind of like a few episodes back where I carved that bench. And so that is today's main takeaway. The reason why these items sell, and they sell for so much, is because in some way or another they are unique. They're not something that everyone else is making. Okay, so the first one that we're going to talk about is this hexagon tray. We've talked about before how trays are in every household. So what caught my eye on this one was, it was in the popular section of this store's internet site. So that just means that it's one of their most purchased items. And it's pretty cool. But is it $200 cool? This one is $196.99. I don't know where they keep getting the 99 cents. It's the psychological gas effect. So let's say that they are selling this thing for $200. So if you look closely at this, what we have is a hexagon. All of the material looks like that it's made out of 1/2 inch material. So this would be a perfect picket or pallet wood build. If you're going to build this, keep in mind that whenever you're cutting the outside edges with the material standing up against the fence, The rest of the material you can actually cut laying flat on the bed. So this is one that I just put together, like literally right before I recorded this. I just threw this hexagon together. All of your corners have to be the same length, and they all have to be cut at 30 degrees. I'm just gonna keep my face here. So the way that they started this is just by staining all of your material, and then you'll take the outside of the tray and assemble that. And what they've done, if you look through these cracks, you can see that they have slats running across where you can attach the boards that you can see from the underneath. I just cut this as well. Again, 30 degrees on each side. So they'll have slats like this in the back. And the only thing that they are there for is to be able to attach the ones that you'll see, or I'll call them the ones in the front. So once you have some back slats in and flush with what we would call the back of your tray, and now it would be time to install the inside. So if you're looking at that picture, your first one would go all the way across. And of course you have back slats that you're attaching this to, and you would go all the way down with your slats, okay? So all the way to the bottom. And then at the top, where they have them angled, that's all they've done to start, is to add another double-sided 30-degree board, and then attach all of these from the back as you go. They'll go all the way across, and then repeat the process for the opposite side. So they have theirs stained up to make it look rustic. Again, what I'm seeing over and over on a lot of these sites is that they are calling it modern rustic. And anytime that a trend is in, like modern rustic, capitalize on that, use that. So you are now selling anything that you make that incorporates metal and wood, or anything with a geometric shape. I don't know why they consider that modern. I mean, heck, the pyramids were used building a lot of these methods. It's just marketing. But anytime you use any of that stuff, modern rustic. So in this case, they used this hexagon, which they're calling modern, and rustic, which they just took new wood and made it look old. So they just put a stain on this, and it looks great. But I would also offer different styles with alternating colors on the slats and things like that. And again, whenever you go to sell these things, stage them up like this. On this particular item, I would actually stage it up inside and outside, like on an outside patio table. It would actually look pretty cool on an outside table. I may just make one for myself. A grill setting, you can put some spices and different things like that in there. Maybe even some cutlery and salt and pepper shaker. I don't know. And that is another thing that people will spend money on, is the outdoor entertainment areas. So this is where their guests will come over. They'll sit out back for entertainment, and they want it to look nice. That is a perfect selling point, and if you made up a bunch of these, I do not think that you would have any trouble at all moving them. Now, will you get 200 bucks for them? No, essentially you can build this out of one fence picket or some scrap wood, so at most you'll have a few bucks in it. So price it reasonable. So what I've learned is that every different state has different selling prices, as well as every different country. So just test the waters with each one of these products to determine your price. Yes, you'll have to put in a little bit of work, but it will pay off. And before we hop into the next one, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit that little notification bell. On to the next one. So this next one actually incorporates a couple of different ideas. I was on what I'll call P1's website, and I noticed that one of their top sellers was this rustic heart. Scrolled onto some of their other hot selling items, and this wooden egg pops up. So what they have done, they're creating these things around the different holidays. They have Valentine's Day, and then Easter's coming up. And I guarantee you, they have the same sizes and using this exact same material, and they'll have like a shamrock, and then they'll have a pumpkin or something like that. Then they'll have a tree. So the holidays, people will spend money on decorations for the holidays. We have discussed this, and this is proof of that. They're wanting $83 for a 12 by 12 heart, or if you wanted a 24 by 24, that's going to run you 130 bucks. So let's zoom in and take a closer look at this. This is rustic looking wood. So for the pallet people out there, perfect. This thing is for you. And if you're not into pallets, again, the fence pickets, before you sand them down, they look rough. They have the saw marks still in them. Leave those in there, then you can just stain or paint that up, and it will give it that rustic look. But you can even see some of the old nail holes and things like that in this material. And if you want to replicate that, stain or paint it however that you would like. Hammer in an old nail and then knock it back out, leaving the hole and leaving the indention. And those rough areas actually help to set off this rustic look. So how did they build this? They started off with just a 12 by 12 square. So I just cut 12-inch strips, square ends, and lay them flat on the table until I had a 12 by 12. Once you have that, if you look closely here, you can actually see through those slats, and you see horizontal slats. So there is no backer to this. Originally, when I first saw this, I thought that they actually had this attached to a piece of like 1/4 inch plywood. They didn't even do that. They've just taken some of the same material, made thin slats, laid it across this 12 by 12 material, and then attached all of those strips from the back. They probably have 3 of those running down this whole thing, which is even better because using scrap wood to attach this adds to the rustic look and is cheaper than 1/4 inch plywood. So once you have your square, now's the hard part. You have to draw a perfect heart. Why is drawing a heart so difficult? It always just seems like you get one side right and the other side's lumpy or whatever. So let me show you the easiest way to draw a perfect heart. Drawing a perfect heart is a lot easier than what we make it out to be. We just need to start with a perfect square. And the larger the square, the larger that the heart will be. I'm going to make a 4-inch square. So once you have your square on these top 2 edges, let's go ahead and make a center mark. So since this is a 4-inch square, I'm marking at 2. So now I'm going to set my compass to the distance from the center mark to the edge of our square. Then that's all that we'll do is make an arch from the center point to our corner. We'll do the same thing on this side, center point, and now we have a perfect heart. That's just one of the reasons why a compass comes in super handy in any workshop. I would draw that out on a piece of cardboard, cut it out, use that as a template. The thickness in the description of this is 1 inch total, so that means that every bit of this material used is a 1/2 inch thick. So super easy to make. If your wood is rustic enough, you can leave it natural or you can paint them up like they have done. And as easy as these things are to make, I would do a little bit of each. See what's selling and then follow that path. So this next one is another modern rustic design. Tissue box. Seen these things around for years, but they really just didn't appeal to me. But with adding a little bit of hardware to this, that made them look pretty cool. Okay, so the thing is every house has tissue boxes sitting around and they're an eyesore. So everyone is looking for different ways to cover that up. Since modern rustic is in, that's what you'll make. Modern rustic tissue boxes. And that's all that this is a box with an open bottom. You can slide over your box of tissues and it just hides the ugly box underneath. They're wanting $73 for their modern rustic tissue box, and it was a popular item. So people are buying these things. So these have super thin material and they are crudely built. So if you have some 1/4 inch material laying around, perfect for this. You can even use a 1/2 inch material, but just make sure that the insides will still fit over a tissue box or the side walls of these tissue boxes. That's all that they are using is a butt joint. So literally just butting up 2 pieces of wood. So let's say that your material is a 1/2 inch thick. We're just gluing this and throwing in a couple of brad nails just to hold that together. We're doing this all the way around until they have their box. Now the top, that's all that they have done is taken another piece of wood that's the same thickness and just set it on top. To get the little tissue opening, there's several different ways that you can do that. The easiest would be to draw your oval out where you want the tissues to come out of. Drill a hole in the center of your oval, put your jigsaw blade in there, and then jigsaw this out. Or if you didn't want to use a jigsaw, you could also use a router for that part. Then they just glued and nailed the top on. But the reason why these things are selling, it's not because of the box. I mean, it's a crudely built, kind of a cheap looking box, but it's the hardware. It's the sides. It's that modern rustic. It's those small little metal straps that are going around the corners. Those things are dirt cheap. So for a little over $8, you can get a 30 pack of those. And if it were me, I would also get some of these. These are made for the corners, and then that would really set it off. So if you had these on each one of your corners, and then those metal straps, you could sell these things like hotcakes. I wonder where that saying came from. Sell them like hotcakes. So a hot cake is a pancake. Okay, so if you know where selling something like hotcakes came from, drop it into the comments because that's another thing I have no clue. I have all kinds of sayings that I have no clue what they mean. I really should start looking them up. So this next one, I was just playing around in the shop and I was actually making some wooden boxes. So that kind of escalated into an idea of a wooden basket. Like I'm picturing this full of vegetables from the garden. So I'm calling it a garden basket. So I used some reclaimed pine that I had here. Then I had some old leather laying around. I just cut and made handles. But this is big and this is kind of heavy. So I wanted to see if I could make these out of one fence picket, and you can. And this one I've just painted different colors. Instead of leather, I just put a piece of rope in there. So I made a short video on how to make these step by step. It's super easy. But again, if you are a plans in the hand type of person and you would like the plans for this, just head over to my Etsy shop. I'll throw the link in the description and the plans will be there. Let's go ahead and hop into this video. Again, this is only one fence picket that is 72 inches long and 5.5 inches wide. So to start with, I'm just going to take my picket and cut 2 12-inch boards off of the end. We'll be using those for the sides. And then I'll take my 12-inch boards and I'll measure down 1.75 inches from the top of each corner. Then I'll set my saw to 40 degrees, and then from the mark that I made, I'll cut in. I'll flip the board over and repeat this process. Now with the ends cut, we can go ahead and make our slats. Using what is left of the picket, go ahead and rip that down to 1.5 inch strips. Then we'll take those strips and cut those down to 14 inches in length. We'll need 9 of these. Now we will pre-drill and counterbore each one of these boards. So I'll start by measuring 1/4 inch in and marking center. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can use a 3/8 inch drill bit set at 3/8 inch deep. And that's what I'm showing you here. Or to make it even easier, you can use Craig's quick flip and you don't have to worry about tear out, and it will counterbore and pre-drill at the same time. So after we have all of our holes drilled and bored, let's put this thing together. So to start, I'm going to attach a strip to one of our end boards. I found that it's easier if the end boards are actually upside down, provides a little bit more support. Then I'll attach it to the second end board. Repeat this process for the opposite side. Now let's install the rest of our slats. I'm going to use 3/4 inch spacing, and just an FYI, I'm using wood glue and 1 inch pocket hole screws. Then once our first side is installed, I will go ahead and move on to the bottom, and for the bottom, I want one board flush with each edge and one board centered. Once the bottom is installed, we will just repeat this process for the remaining side. And to make everything nice and neat, I'm going to cap off my bore hose with 3/8 inch dowel, or you can buy 3/8 inch plugs for this. Just a common sense reminder, never cut towards your hand if you're using dowels. It never works out well. But after you have all of your dowels in place, let's go ahead and sand those down. Now let's go ahead and add our handles. We're going to measure in 3 inches in from each side and 1 inch down. This is where we will drill our hose to fit the rope that you're deciding to use. I'm using 3/8 inch rope. You'll need 2 30-inch pieces to tie a knot in one end, feed it through, feed it back in, and then tie a knot in the other. Now you have 2 rope handles and a pretty cool basket. I really think that the dowels set it off. And these things will sell. I've told you before, any type of box or basket will sell. But if you're going to sell these as a garden basket, I would use the cedar. The cedar pickets have came down, so they're only a few bucks. And take the time to do the extra step of putting these plugs in. That just finalizes it. It makes it look clean. It makes it look nice. That's what's going to set your product apart from everyone else's. And they even sell these little buttons. So these are 1/4 inch wooden buttons that will go into the pre-drilled holes, and they're actually rounded on the top. So they've even made it that much easier for you. And these things are neat and will sell. And when you stage these up, you can either put some vegetables in there, throw some fresh flowers in there. The cool thing about something like this is that it is whatever you are advertising it as, be it a vegetable basket, be it a flower basket, or just a decoration for the house. Regardless, they're super neat and they'll sell. And this last one, you know that I like to save something that I think that is kind of crazy but interesting for the end. This woodcut pyramid for jewelry that they're wanting $40 for. Look familiar? I like mine better. I actually made a whole set of these things just playing around because this blew my mind. Who is paying this? Someone is paying that, or they would not be making these things and taking up their space. So yes, it is a cool idea to take something like this, to put watches on, or even these smaller ones to put rings on. It's neat. I like the idea, but this is crazy. So all that I did was take an old 4x4 and I set my miter saw on 50 degrees, made my first cut, turned the board, made my second cut all the way around, and this is what you come up with. A $40-some jewelry holder. Since I do not wear watches in the shop, I'll just have to use my rubber band. Has anybody ever noticed that I always have a rubber band on? But that's how it works. $40-some rubber band holder for me. But you know I like to make fun of these stores for these different types of items, but there's always kind of a message attached to it whenever I'm doing it. So yeah, these things are crazy that they're selling them for that price, but they are interesting. I'd say go for it. They're different. They're obviously selling. So what I would do is make a set of different sizes, even this little 2x2 for rings. They don't have that. I may call them up and see if they want to buy mine. I'll cut them a deal and sell them this one for 10 bucks. I'm just using that as an example because like I've said before, these stores have done their homework. Someone out there is getting paid a ton of money to do the research and keep up with what people are interested in, what people will buy. Obviously, it's something like this for $40-some, or they would not take up their shelf space with it. So again, when you're looking for ideas, hop onto these different sites, see what's popular, see how many reviews that it has. If it has 10,000 reviews, and let's say that only 10% of the people that purchase it actually leave a review, look at how many units that they've sold of that. Research has already been done for you. Just up to you to interpret it, take that item, put your own twist to it, take that concept, make a different item or a different product, and sell it. I cannot stress that enough. So even the big box stores do this. So if one company has something that is selling really well, you can guarantee that within a week, you will see it in every store out there. That's business, that's marketing, and that's how you keep on top of what is hot and what is selling. If you're making these types of items anyway, and some may be perfect for weddings, why not try renting them out? Because there is nothing like getting paid over and over and over for the exact same item. So the average cost of a wedding in the United States right now is right around $30,000, with $2,000 to $10,000 of that going into decorations. And weddings fall into one of those categories that we talk about that people will spend money on their kids, grandkids, pets, except weddings are at the top. And for the types of builds that we like to do, this is a perfect opportunity to not just sell one item, but to potentially rent 10, 20, 30, or even sell that many. And this first one is going to be a mason jar centerpiece. So this would not only be great for outdoor weddings, but it would also be great for really any outdoor setting. So right now for weddings, Farmhouse or Rustic is in, except they may just change the name to make things sound better, like Modern Rustic, like if they had a piece of metal or something. So for this application, it's not just called Rustic, it's called Rustic Chic. Now, doesn't that sound a lot more fancy than just rustic? Whatever, it's a marketing tactic. If you're marketing this for wedding rentals, market it as rustic chic because that's what's in, that's what people are looking up. Or if you're just marketing it to sell with your other items, just call it rustic farmhouse or farmhouse. Don't call it rustic chic. Sometimes you can get too fancy for some people. This thing is 4.5 inches wide by 4.5 inches deep by 14 inches long. Perfect for a pallet wood or fence picket build. Okay, so let's go ahead and just talk about these mason jars real quick and get those out of the way. You can pick them up for next to nothing. You can actually pick them up at a sale in huge boxes for dirt cheap, like a couple bucks for a whole box. That's all that they have done is spray painted these with some type of a chalk paint or a lighter pastel looking paint. You can really use about any type of paint, let that dry, then take maybe like a quadruple zero steel wool to it, lightly sand it or you'll get through to your glass, and it will give it that hazy kind of chalky look. If you're not, with some grass string around the top, don't even worry about the flowers because you're not going to be selling them with flowers in it. I would suggest if you're going for the wedding look, maybe try to do a lot of these jars in white. So the average mason jar is a little under 7 inches in height, so that bottom bar that's going to cross is only going to be about 2 inches. Again, since this is rustic or rustic chic, so all of this could be put together with brad nails and glue. If you're making these for wedding rentals, I've actually made a ton of things and I actually used to own a wedding rental business. People are rough on your products, so make them tough. Put in a little extra effort, make them super durable. So what I would do is kind of like what we did on the garden basket, which is another great wedding item. I can picture those like at the reception with like bread and rolls and things like that in it. Okay, so I got a little off track there, so back on track here. But like the garden baskets, I would pre-bore these sides, put screws in this, and then put caps on those. That will actually add to the look and make them super durable. So if you zoom in and look at the end of this thing, you can actually see how easy it would be to build. So let's say that our two sides, we're going to say that they're 2.5 inches wide by 1/2 inch thick. So we know that this thing is 4.5 inches wide total. That means that that centerpiece is 3.5 inches wide by 4.5 inches tall. And then like our garden baskets, it looks like that they just dropped down an inch, went in maybe 1/2 inch, and then threw some rope in there. For the bottom of these things, if you're just making these things to sell, not necessarily to rent, all that they've used is some 3/16 plywood. So if you were making these for weddings, I would not use the 3/16 plywood at all. I'd make these heavy duty. I would actually use the exact same material that I use for the outsides and the ends and install the bottom on the inside. It's going to make it 10 times more durable and sturdy. So with the jars and different types of decoration, I have seen prices from $30 up to $90. And this is the one that the PB is selling for $87, which I think that it looks horrible compared to the other one, but obviously people are buying them or it would not have been on their site. So if I were to sell these things outright, I would probably go for around the $30 range. If I were going to rent these things as centerpieces, I would charge around $15 a piece. And again, the awesome thing about renting these things is that they're not going to rent just one. Can you remember the last wedding that you went to and how many tables were at the reception? So that's how many of these things that people would actually be renting and then bringing back to you. So I'll let you do the math on that. So this next one that we are going to cover, I'm going to break down a couple of different examples, and that is signs. Not only do people love signs around their house, but they love them at their wedding. They're everywhere telling people where to go, where to sit, where the food's at, what type of food's here, yada yada. There are signs everywhere, and for the most part, they have rented every single one of those. So you can make these to rent, or you can make these to sell. So this first example is going to be more like the type of sign that you'd have sitting around your house with like the little sayings like welcome or home is where the heart is, or whatever. So if you're doing this for weddings, they're going to be more geared towards weddings. The guest book, the cocktails, the welcome signs, where the food's at, most important part. And the crazy thing about these signs, both these and the ones that I'll be showing you here in a moment, they rent for around $10 a sign, and they also sell for around $10 a sign. And I'm going to estimate that there's probably 5 to 10 signs at each wedding, so there's some pretty easy money. This specific one is 8 by 10 inches, and if you look sticking up from the back of these signs, you can actually see how they are put together. So this is what they use to make this one. It's actually 2 pieces of wood, and yes, this is fence picket scraps. They've just sandwiched them together, then they've used these little 1x1 sticks. You see them kind of sticking up on the back. They did that on purpose for the looks, but that's actually how they joined this material together. You'd have like an 8 1/4 inch stick on both sides, glue from the back, and throw in some brad nails. So that's how simple that it is to make that sign. And I know what you're saying, why don't you just use an 8 by 10 board? An 8 by 10 solid board, since these are designed for the outdoors, they're going to collect moisture really easy and they're going to warp or bow. So having 2 pieces put together actually adds more to that rustic chic look, and you'll get a lot more uses out of them. And then the little stand that is sitting on, more scrap wood here. That's all that they have done is taken a flat board, put a front lip on it, and then it looks like that they put about a 15-degree bevel on the back piece, which is what I put on this. That way it will just sit on this board. Then whenever you add your sign, it will just lean back a bit. So super easy to make. You make all 3 of these signs for less than $2, and I'll get into the writing here in a moment. If I were going to sell these, I would probably sell them between $10 and $20 a piece, depending on if they're customized or not. I'd rent these for around $10 a piece, and if you have matching set like this, they're going to rent all of them. And these next signs, you see them at every outdoor wedding, and again, it's just telling people what to do, where to sit, where the wedding's happening, where the reception's at, where the bathroom's at, whatever. But they're everywhere, and again, they are renting these things for $10 each, and if you look at these things, they are super simple to make. That's all that it is an arrow pointing one direction. So if you're using these for wedding rentals, make sure the writing that you have on the front, you also have it on the back. That way, either way that they point the arrow, it's pointing in the right direction. They can choose which side. And for the backing, it can really be any size board. I would at least make them maybe 14, 16 inches long. And then the stake, it's just a stake. It's a piece of scrap wood. Probably 1.5 inches to 2 inches wide, just cut down to a point at one end. They threw a couple of screws in the center of these things. If you're wanting to keep these long term, I would maybe just attach one of those little metal plates like you can get a 2-pack at Walmart for 99 cents at the top of these things, because that's where they're going to be hammering these things in at, and it'll last you a lot longer. And then there's also these types of signs that just hang on chairs, hang on ropes that may go across the aisle, just different things like that. Super easy to sell just for people at their homes or for weddings. Now, I told you that I'd talk about the writing on these things. A lot of these things will be used at every single wedding. They're not going to be customized. So there's stencils out there that you can actually buy just to spray paint this stuff on. And they also make the vinyl stickers with all of this stuff that you can put that on and then put a seal coat on that. And I've got a lot of messages from you guys that have CNC machines, that have lasers, asking for tips to customize some of the previous builds that we have made. So all of these builds would be perfect for either one of those. I actually had a guy to write into the brag board. Speaking of that, I'm going to throw a link in the description if you would like to submit something or check out the brag board. Also, check out our Patreon community. It is growing like crazy and we're having a good time. But he was telling me how successful that he was selling the trellises to the different garden areas. What he was doing was selling to a lot of these flower stands and nurseries. And before he would go, he would actually laser engrave or write out the name of the store to give one as a gift. Genius. That is genius marketing, because he knew that they would not sell that one. They would actually put it as a display, which was a display of his item. So anytime that anyone saw it, it was basically free advertising for him. So kudos there. And for those of you that have those types of machines, I'm going to try to integrate more examples of how you can utilize that in your builds. Yes, you can sell all of this stuff without that type of customization, but anything extra just makes it a little bit more enticing. Let me show you what I mean. So this is just an example that I'm going to cut out for you guys on the Thunder Laser. I've actually had this machine for about a month now, and I'm still trying to learn the different settings on it, but this is an example of what I'm talking about. If you have any type of machine for personalization like this, you could actually use it to cut these shapes out, and then you could just etch these designs and wording on there. That way you would not have to worry about it peeling off and things like that. And if you do not have one of those machines, I'd either use stencils, I would hand paint it on. If your handwriting is better than mine, make sure to put a seal coat on that. I would use the exact same pricing as I mentioned before on any of these signs. And the cool thing about this for customized items for weddings is people will buy a ton of them because they'll want to be able to send one home with each guest. Yes, there are tons and tons of people out there making these things and selling them in bulk. The one thing that makes you different than everyone else is that you are also making these larger items to rent. So they can rent their arbor, they can rent their centerpieces, and they can also buy customizable gifts. The more things that you can offer to make yourself a one-stop shop, the better. So this next one, this is an A-frame chalkboard sign. So these are the signs that are at weddings, at restaurants, you know, that'll have the special of the day, things like that. That'll also have like reception halls over here. But you'll usually see 3 or 4 of these things at an outdoor wedding. If you were to buy these things, this particular one is $275. So let me teach you how to build it real quick for probably less than 10 bucks. I know the first thing that you're going to say is I do not have access to a chalkboard. Well, yes, you do. I've used chalk paint for tons and tons of different items throughout the years. I used to actually take old gridded off windows, paint every other one with some chalk paint, throw on some different coat hooks. Then I would actually market that as something for someone's entryway. So to get the chalkboard section of this, just take some hardboard, like the brown fiber hardboard, and then paint it with chalk paint. That's all that you would need. So I'd start off by making the frame for this. And that's all that they have done is they've used 1-inch material on the sides and 2-inch materials for the top and the bottom. Yes, the top has a handle and a little design, but if you look really close, that's added later on. You're just making a square essentially with leaving a couple of inches on the sides past your bottom board. And what they've done on that couple of inches to make it look like that they have dadoed in the crossboard on the bottom, they haven't. They've taken another 1-inch piece, probably a couple of inches long, and then just attached it to the inside of the leg. And then for the very top of the handles, it looks like all that they have done is taken maybe a 4 or 5-inch wide board, fence picket, use the jigsaw, crudely cut out this design, and then cut out the handles in the middle. Screwed and glued this down to the top board of the frame and then into the sides. Very easy to do, and it does not have to be perfect. You do not want this perfect because this is rustic chic. And then to attach the chalkboard to this, they've actually inset all of this in what looks like maybe a rabbet joint. I wouldn't even do that. I would just make sure that you had enough overlap of the backboard to glue and attach it all the way around. I would just lay the frame straight down, turn your chalkboard over, put it flat, and with glue and screws, just attach this right to your frame. Then they just repeated that process for the back, put a hinge on both sides of the top. That way, whenever you pick up on the handle, it just folds up. And then they've just used a couple of screws, then about a foot of cheap chain on both sides of this. That way, whenever it folds out, it doesn't fold too far out. It'd be a great item to market for people's front porches, for their produce stands, for their businesses, and for weddings. So if you're looking to actually sell something like this, I would at least try to get $75 to $100 out of it. And if I was going to rent this for weddings, I would get $45 to $50 a piece for these. And so this next one I've seen on almost every outdoor wedding page that I looked at, and that is this rustic chic lantern. They're doing everything with these. They're lining the aisles with these. That's all over the reception tables. And the big thing is that they are putting these as centerpieces on a table as well. So not only are they super hot for weddings, but this would be super cool sitting out back of like a grill area or on someone's front porch. So since there were so many wedding examples of people using these, and they were $20 to $35 a piece without the candle or any type of decoration, I decided to make a few for myself. And what I figured out is I can actually make a set of 3 out of 1 fence picket. So essentially you can make this set of 3 for around $2. If I were going to sell these, I would probably sell them for about $20 a piece. I would rent these for $30 for a set of 3. And that is one thing that I did not see whenever I was looking these up, were people selling or renting them in sets. They were all individuals. So if I were going to stage these up to sell, it would look something like this, just because it's different than what other people are offering. So how did I make these? So the 3 different sizes are 6-inch, 8-inch, and 12-inch. I'm about to explain to you step by step on how to make these, but again, if you're a plans in the hand type of person, I'm going to throw a cheap set of plans for this whole set in my Etsy shop. The link will be in the description so you can check that out. But even without plans, these things are pie to make, not pumpkin. Your standard fence picket is 5.5 inches wide. So the first thing that I did was cut 5.5 inch in length and made 8 square top and bottom boards. And then the next thing that I did was cut my legs to length. So I wanted my heights to be 6, 8, and 12. So I cut 4 strips to each one of those lengths that were 1 inch wide. And I also cut 4 strips to each one of those lengths that was 1/2 inch wide. So then I glued and nailed those legs together to make this L shape. So when it's put together, you have 1 inch here and 1 inch here. And then that's all that I did in order to get this shape. Set the leg on top of my square parts and then trace this leg out with a pencil. Did that on all 4 corners and then just used a jigsaw to cut that pattern out. Then once that one was done, I just used that pattern, laid it on top of my remaining 7 boards, cut those out with a jigsaw. So essentially all of these are just made up with the leg parts. And then the top, once my squares were cut out, I attached one flush with my top and it just fit right in. It actually gives a kind of a cool look there, almost like an inlaid look. And then for the bottom, I just measured up 1/2 inch, that way it would actually have some legs, and glued and nailed all of these into place. All 3 of these, making them for the first time, probably took me 45 minutes to make. And if you wanted to leave the tops open like this, go for it. I just thought that this kind of gave it more of a rustic chic look. You can actually get these large candles for a couple bucks a piece. For this size and smaller, you can probably pick up for around $1 a piece. So if you made it this far into the video, you obviously like something about this series. This is actually episode number 14. So if you think that I've earned a subscribe, don't forget to hit my logo there in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, because I have plenty more of this stuff to come. So this next one I know that we have talked about before. Wooden rounds. I kind of joked about them before, and now the joke's on me because they are going crazy with everything. Not only are they super popular for weddings right now, the OPB has thrown a couple hoes and a piece of firewood and called it a cutting board. And they want, and they're getting, $100 for this slice of firewood with a couple of holes in it. So for weddings, they are using these things for everything. They are using them for the chargers for the plates. They're using them for the cake stands. They're using them for coasters. So that's where something like this that I mentioned earlier, if this was put into a live edge round, they would go nuts over it. If you know anyone with a firewood pile and a chainsaw, ask them for a little bit of help. Or if you have a bandsaw at home and you have some cured wood that you can make rounds out of, this would be perfect and a huge seller and a huge opportunity to rent. Now, chargers and things like that, you're not going to get as much money for the rentals, maybe a couple of dollars a piece, but that's going to be for every guest that they have at the wedding. So that's going to be the charger, the cup holder, and most likely some type of centerpiece as well. So that means that you could literally take a pile of firewood, slice it up like this, put a finish on it, and make hundreds of dollars off of it in a day, get it back, just to repeat that process. And not only are they using firewood, they're using branches now. They're actually going as far as to make the ring boxes out of these. They're wanting $20 for this ring box, so of course I had to jump at that opportunity. And I think that mine is better, because I actually attached my little ring box lid, unlike theirs. And you've all seen the kids carrying the rings. I mean, they're all over the place. They're slinging them. That's usually why they're like tied to the pillow. What do you think is going to happen to that? It's going to fly out of their hands. They're outside. It's going to fall in a pile of sticks, and then they'll never find the ring. So again, like before, maybe I'll have to hit them up and offer them a heck of a deal. I'll send them all the tree branch ring boxes they want for $10 a piece. And if they decide to take me up on my limited edition ring box, I'll let you guys know so you can hop on that train with me. So let's go ahead and get our Hobby Lobby hack on. And we're going to go ahead and roll some footage. So I'm actually in the store here chilling with some Kenny G. And we're going to pause this right here because I'm just going to give you a quick, interesting insight to the marketing side of Hobby Lobby. If you will ever notice that any Hobby Lobby that you ever go in across the United States, they will always be playing relaxing music and they will always have some type of scent. I'm really not for sure exactly what it is. It's almost like a fresh cut flowers or something like that, even though there's nothing fresh cut in the whole store. It's all fake. But both of those are styles of marketing. The Kenny G or the soft music slows your pace down while you're shopping. It actually slows the customer down, relaxes them, and is actually proven to produce more sales. And then the scent. They want every store that you go into to have that same familiar smell as well as that relaxing sound. That way you feel more at home. You feel more relaxed and you'll buy more. There's just a quick tip, just so you'll know that you're getting played anytime you go into a store like that. So this first one, I just walked into the first aisle that I could find that had mostly woodworking items in it and came across this. So this is just a little tabletop decorative item, okay? So this thing is not very big. It's only a 10 by 10. And what caught my eye was the dowels going across with the letters actually able to spin on those. And the other thing that caught my eye was they were wanting $25 for this, and I could see just how easy it was to make. Okay, so let's break this down. The sides going all the way around are 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches by 3/4 inch thick. They put 45-degree miters in the corners. The blocks are 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches by 1 inch thick with a hole drilled through the center. Those dowel rods, those are 1/4 inch dowel rods, so I'm going to say that the holes in the center of the blocks are about 3/8 of an inch. And you can see from this angle exactly how they inserted the dowels, because there are holes on one side of this but not on the other. So that's all that they did on one side board, was make a little bit of a counterboard just so that that dowel can actually just slide in there, probably through a little bit of wood glue. And then on the other side of it is a hole drilled all the way through it. That way you can feed the dowel, add your letters as you go, and then lock it into that counterboard. What really caught my eye about this was the possibilities that you could get it to say anything. Okay, so what they have is just love you more, and the writing that's on these blocks, you can just do this with stamps or stencils. So I'd pick up a cheap capitalized letter 1-inch stencil set or stamp set from Amazon and use those to put your letters on these blocks. So just look up some trending sayings. Okay, so in these corners I could not find a brad nail. I could not find anything except for this. So this wood has not been stained, so what that is CA glue. That's all that they have done, is they have taken a little bit of wood glue, put that in, put CA glue in this corner to act as a clamp while the wood glue dried, and then they moved on. If it were me, I would go ahead and glue this up and throw some brad nails on this, depending on how fancy you wanted to get. You could put some finger joints, whatever that you would like. Again, this is a $25 item from Hobby Lobby. I think you could make these, sell these with the seasons all day long for 20 bucks a piece. And altogether, you'd only have 2 or 3 bucks in this whole build. And once you get your process down, you could probably throw this thing together in less than 20 minutes. And what actually stopped me on this next one was that it was a board with a rope, and I needed to see how much they were charging for this thing. Well, they were charging $25 for this, and it is literally a board and some rope. This board is 6 inches wide by 16.5 inches long, but the more that I looked at it, it's actually pretty cool. So they have designed this, of course, to look like an old swing that you would have, you know, hanging off of a tree limb, you know, outside of your house. So kind of a nostalgic item. But they have actually designed this thing so it can be used as a shelf. And that's all that they have done is taken some rope like this. When you're buying this stuff, buy it in bulk because it is a lot cheaper than buying it by the foot. So all that they have done is taken this 6-inch board, moved in 1 inch and up 1 inch, and then drilled a hole the diameter of their rope. Now, as far as the board itself, you can paint it up, distress it up any way that you would like. Again, try to find colors that are in. So all that they have done is taken 2 pieces of rope. And now you can do this 2 different ways, but on the back of this thing, the back rope either has to be shorter, or whenever you go to tie your knot underneath, it has to be higher up. The knot in this rope, which is what you're going to use to hang it to the wall, is in the center. So whenever you go to hang this, it's going to lean like this. So either the back rope is actually shorter, you know, pulling the back up, or they've just tied the knots underneath up a little bit further. I'm going to say there's probably going to be 3/4 or 1 inch difference in that, but that will bring that to level. So you may just have to play around with it a little bit until you get the exact length, and then you can duplicate that. So I'm just going to show you what they've done. Let's say that they've made their adjustments from the underneath on the back of it to bring it to level. They've taken 2 pieces of rope that are the exact same length, and at the top, they have just tied a knot in it. And this is what will actually be used to hang this on the wall. Your remaining 4 points, those are going to be going to the 4 corners of this shelf, going through, and then tying a knot in the bottom. It's as easy as that. A board and some rope, 25 bucks. Depending on how you distress these things and how you market these things, I would say for $10 to $15, you'd have no issues at all moving these things. And so this next one caught my eye because, again, how easy it is to build and the price. So they are wanting $65 for this. I'm calling it a long farmhouse box. And this is going to be another decoration style item. So this will actually sit outside on their porches. It'll sit inside of their house, or maybe even hanging on the wall to put mail and things like that in. And if you're going to do something like that, then throw some little hooks on the front. That way you could actually hang some keys and things like that on there. Okay, so this thing is 32 inches long by 8 inches tall at the tallest point and 6 inches wide. Let's go ahead and talk about these parts for a minute. This front horizontal plate, it's a 1/2 inch thick by 3 inches tall. The divider and the 2 end pieces, those are 3/4 inch thick and only about 5 inches wide. Remember, this thing's only 6 inches total. And with the front slat and the one in the back, that's going to be 6 inches. If it was me, just because I like fence pickets, I'll build this whole thing out of fence pickets. And then the 2 back slats, they look to be about 2 inches wide each. And then the bottom board, I'm not sure why, they actually used a piece of 3/8 material. I actually saw a lot of things built out of 3/8 material. But if you're using 5-inch picket material and you've already used it for the end, go ahead and just use the exact same material for the bottom. If it were me, I would actually inset that bottom. I think that it would clean this look up a little bit, and maybe even consider making this thing a little narrower and insetting the rest of the parts as well. But this was the fastest, easiest way to do it. And as you can see by looking at the back, all of these parts have been stained, except for the back. You can tell that they use pine and some other type of wood there. Everything is pretty much butt joint. That's all that they've done is glued and put brad nails in this. You can actually see some white spots in some of the stain where they assembled this whole thing before they stained it. I would recommend staining all of your parts before putting this thing together. And the hardest part of this build, which is not hard at all, is going to be the 2 end pieces and the centerpiece. Okay, so the divider, just because it has that arch to it. And so this is how I would do the end pieces and the divider. So I'd take a 5 by 8 inch board. I'd measure 4 inches up, is over, and then straight back up to the top. That will leave us 2 inches on this side. This is going to be a 90-degree angle here, and you notice that this one's actually arched. You can find something around if you want to be perfect, but this is rustic farmhouse, so you do not have to be perfect. Just kind of make a little swooping arch like that. And then the same thing for this top corner. You see where it's kind of rounded over. So that's all you're going to do is just bring it over just a little bit. Then Take your jigsaw, cut this out. Once you have your first one made, use that one as the template for the other two, or if you're going to mass produce these, use it as a template for every single one. Then once you have all of your pieces cut, I would just glue, brad nail all of this stuff together. Looks like that the only thing that they have actually distressed is the top board. You wouldn't even have to do that if you're staining this like the rest of it, but they did a little bit of whitewashing, just a really light coat of almost dry brushed white paint just going across that top board. And that's really all there is to it. It's as simple as that. So with all of these parts combined, if you're using picket material, probably take a picket and a half to make this whole thing, but you can knock this out really quick, put your own twist to it. I do not like these colors. I would paint these things up, distress these things up, and I really think that they would sell, especially if you're going for the modern rustic like we discussed in other videos where this will actually be inside of the house. But again, you'll have less than $5 in this whole thing. They're selling them for $65. For something like this, you'll have to test the market on it in your area because every area is different. But I would think that you wouldn't have any issues getting $40–45 out of something like this. And this next one I actually found pretty close to the last one, and it is a farmhouse tray. We've talked about trays before about how everyone loves these rustic looking trays, and this one's pretty neat because it's a large tray. So it's large and kind of short. So this is 26 inches long by 15 inches wide. Each one of the bottom boards of this is 5 inches wide, fence picket material. I would find some thin ones. You know how it is, you pick up a bundle of fence pickets and you find some of those real thin ones that they sneak in there on you. Perfect for something like this because we're not using screws, we're using brad nails. So for the sides of this tray, they're only 3 inches tall and they actually butt up against the bottom boards, and the ends are only 3.5 inches tall at the tallest point. The reason why it looks taller than that is because it's actually sitting on top of the bottom boards, whereas the two sides actually sit even with the bottom boards. Now the corners of this thing, that's all that they have done is taken a jigsaw, cut off that sharp corner. Does not have to be anything fancy. And then the handle, we've talked about making these handles before. I would just drop down about 1 inch or so, outline the design of your handle, then take a drill bit that is wider than your jigsaw blade, make a hole there, start your jigsaw and actually cut this handle out from the inside. Do the same thing for the opposite. And again, before assembling any of this, I would go ahead and put on any type of stain or paint that you would like to do, but this is a perfect build to get rid of any of the material that you have that may have a crack or a defect in it, because again, this is the rustic look. They're wanting this to look like that it was found out in an old barn. So those defects add character, and if you do not have the material with enough defects in it, I would actually put my own in there. I've covered in other videos how to make the fake saw marks, how to actually make the old nail marks, things like that. And like I said, the cool thing about this is that it's so big, so people would put this like in the center of their table, and then they would put like a centerpiece and salt and pepper shakers, things like that. They're getting $55 a piece for these things. Again, this is a super simple build. I think if you put these things together and actually spend some time on the rustic detail of these things, that you have no issue selling these things for $35–40 a piece. So if you're still with me at this point of the video and you think that I've earned to subscribe, make sure to do that by clicking my logo down in the corner. And just an FYI for anyone out there that may be interested in joining our Patreon community, it is growing like crazy. We now have over 200 members, and that is awesome. So if you're interested in what that's all about, I'll throw a link into the description and you can check that out. If you remember in some of our past videos, I've talked about how items and geometric shapes are in. They want $75 for this hexagon shelf. So this is another one of those really cool items that looks complicated, but is not at all. And you can actually see here whenever I take it off the shelf, I'm actually surprised on how this thing is put together. Staples. They use staples all on the back to hold these 3 hexagons together. So of course, after seeing this in the store, I actually had to come back and make one of these just to show you guys how easy that this is. This is the hexagon shelf. I actually made this right before recording this out of 1 fence picket. And not only was I able to make this out of 1 fence picket, but I actually had an extra one left. So the cool thing about these geometric shapes is if you do not like this design, you can change it up. You do not have to put this one here. You can put it up here or down below. I've seen them in several different ways. This was the one that they had in the store, so it's the one that I made. So this one actually cost me $3.50. It's actually a little high because you can essentially make it for $2. They're wanting $75, and it's a cool item. So the benefits of this type of item is actually building up. You can build it for next to nothing, and there's a high market value. What is the next thing that we consider? Okay, is our time. How much time will it take us to build this? It took me less than 5 minutes to assemble this whole thing, and maybe 5 minutes of cutting my parts. So the parts themselves, super easy because they're all the exact same part. That's all that I did was rip my picket down to 2 boards that were 2.5 inches wide. Went to the miter saw, set it at 30 degrees because 30 degrees is what you need to make a hexagon. Each one of these sides of the hexagon are 5 3/4 of an inch long. So I just set a stop at 5 3/4 of an inch. This is going to be sitting upright against the fence. Cut my first 30 degree, flip the board, move it down, another 30 degree. flip the board, move it down, cut it again. You're doing this, repeating this step over and over until you have all of your parts. It's as easy as that. And then at that point, you have every single part that you need to make this. If you've watched the channel for very long, you know that I love jigs. So let me show you this super simple jig that I made. It would speed up the process of putting those corners together. Anytime that you have any type of a mitered corner with glue, you know that it tends to slip. Anytime that you put pressure from a nail gun on there, well, with something like this, it does not. It's all that is scrap wood that is holding that 30-degree angle in place over and over again. And there's the proof of how long it took me to put one of these hexagons together just by using a simple jig. And really, I just told you every single step on how to build this and how easy that it is. But if you would actually like the plans for this, head over to my Etsy shop. I'll throw a link in the description. I'll throw a cheap set of plans in there, and I always get asked about the jigs. And I'll also put a layout template in there for making the jig. And then as far as attaching these hexagons together, like I said, they do not have to be in this shape. I actually put a couple screws in mine, but honestly, just some wood glue and some brad nails would probably do the trick. So they're wanting $75 for this. And we know that we can make these things for less than $4 and really, really fast. So pricing for something like this is going to really depend on how many of them that you would like to move. Just keep in mind that whenever I say to test the market in your area, because prices fluctuate drastically depending on where you live, always start pricing your items just a little bit high, see how they perform, and you can always decrease the price of the item if you need to. It's a lot easier to go down in price than it is to go up in price. And this next one caught my eye because it's pretty cool. It is supposed to look like a vintage window. So larger items that are priced decently will catch people's eye. So this thing is 27 inches wide by 35 inches tall, and it's priced at $75. So after looking at this thing and seeing the price, I knew that I could make this thing for probably less than $5, so it made the list. So this thing is very simple to make, and I actually think that they made it more difficult by trying to be cheap with it. So what kind of surprised me about this is that the front of every one of these pieces is a 1/4 inch like veneer of real wood, but the back, like glued to each piece, is a piece of MDF. So it's almost like they cut this profile out and then just stuck the real pieces of wood to it. And also something else that surprised me about this is the centerpiece where it looks like, you know, the window would open. That is a single board that goes down. That's all that they've done is cut a groove in that and painted it black to make it look like it was two separate windows. It'd be just as easy to make two separate parts and then just join those together. So we're going to say we're not going to be using MDF for this. We're just going to be using pallet wood, fence picket material, 2x4 material, whatever that you would like to use. So whatever material that you have decided to use, we're going to make these as two separate panels. For the outsides and the tops, we're going to be using 1 3/4 inch material. And then for the cross slats, we're going to be using 1.5 inch material. The thickness is going to be up to you, but it'd be nice if it was thick enough to throw a couple of pocket holes in the end of each one of the slats that go across. And then actually, whenever you go to join your two panels together, you can put those together with pocket hose as well. And then the hardware on the outside, that's all those are very cheap hinges. You can pick those up off of Amazon, and really doesn't even make sense the way that they have it designed there, because if you notice on one side, the hinges have 3 of the little loops. On the other side, they have 2 of the little loops. Those are actually made so they can interlock together. So it's all that they've done is taken a cheap hinge, knocked the pin out, and then taken those two parts and put them on the outside edges of these windows. There's nothing intricate about the way that they are installed. They're just installed right on the surface. So they're not inset, they're not anything like that. So super easy. The latch in the middle, Amazon. Just type in vintage window latch. I bet you could pick them up for just a couple bucks. Okay, so before you put the hardware on, just dress it up, paint it up, stain it up however that you would like. All that they have done is painted the whole thing black. Even some cheap black spray paint will work. Let that dry. You go over the top of it with just some white paint, and then you just lightly sand the whole thing until it kind of gets to that distressed look that you're going for. And really, that's all there is to it. They want $75 for this, and I guarantee you I could build this thing for $5 or $6. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you were able to learn something from this video. You saw how easy most of these projects went together, how easy that they would be to build. And if you saw something that you would like to build and you're a little bit hesitant on whether you can do it or not, you can. Fear of failure is the reason why people do not succeed and do not get out of their comfort zones. Well, I'm here to tell you, you've got this. So until next time, guys, go build something. See ya.